Okay.
Hey,
There.
okay. So there
I
we
I
go.
see what happened. So last time I thought when you accepted it, it automatically started to record.
Yeah.
So
All
I
right.
missed a step. Okay, so we are recording. And it's showing on
Okay.
my end it's recording, so
Yeah, I see that little thing there too. All right. Well, I guess we might as well just like leave it recording.
yeah.
There's no reason to not. And yeah, but I'm gonna give people until like 11:05 or so, but there's so much like I was going through yesterday, the sheer amount of text that I want to go over today, and it's a lot. So we're gonna give people to 11:05 and then we're gonna get into it. And Normally when we have these Zoom calls, like I want it to be really interactive and we can stop and ask questions and all that, and I want to make space for that, but I am going to kind of move from one thing to a next rather quickly just because we're doing a lot. So if you want to follow along, the two texts that we're going to be in today is from the writings of Abraham and the writings of Eliyahu or Elijah. It's also called the Order of the Ancients, and it's found in Yah scriptures. I'm going to be reading so you can follow along, or if you want to get the text in front of you yourself and kind of follow along, we're just going to be going kind of quickly through it. And then we'll have more discussion and stuff kind of, I think, as the Father leads, because I'm still like I'll just show you. This is this is what my outline looks like. It's just chapter and verses, and it's kind of jumbled, and I don't have a solid outline. And we're just going to trust the Father and the Ruach to lead with this. I'm going to make sure nobody else is trying to join. Doesn't look like it. Give people one more minute. Um, I am going to say, just kind of refreshing on uh, rules of doing the Zoom calls because we have a number of people in here. Um, we want to familiarize each other with the mute and the unmuting of the microphone. If we could leave our mics muted, um, unless you have like a specific question or something. And then you'll see on the phone, it shows up at the bottom. On the computer, it might look different, but having that hand raised option is like a little icon that pops up for me to know that you have a question or a comment or something. And at any time, if there's something that the Spirit is pressing on you and you want to mention or say, or even other scriptural reference, I definitely invite you guys to raise your hands, and I'll try to make sure that I keep up with that. But having mics muted will allow us to make sure that there's no background noise or interruptions that are unintentional, basically. Um, all righty. All right, it's 11:05, so I'm gonna get into this. But I've kind of mentioned in the announcements and stuff the goal of this group. So the main body of the community is branches of the narrow path, and this is already like kind of speaking to we don't want to go too far to the right or too far to the left. We are really trying to stay in the narrow path. And what that is there is hyper grace, then there's super legalism that's also found in the Torah community. And we really want to make sure that we are, as a whole, as a body, pursuing righteousness, but also filled with love. Um, and so that idea of walking the narrow path is even, it's like the next level up of the narrow path. And so this is the order of Hanuk or Enoch. He established this whole organization all the way back even before the flood. It was carried through Melchizedek after the flood. And then we see this. It doesn't show up in canon much just because it's the texts talking about it have been removed. But we see this popping up throughout history that this order of the ancients, an order of Enoch, an order of Elohim, it's sometimes called, is still present all the way through to even we're studying the book of Yochanan, the book of John right now. and we see that this separate sect of people was still present even when Messiah was walking the earth, and they were called the Essenes. And throughout history, the group itself changed in how they did certain things, but a lot of the meat of what the group stood for is the same. And so we're going to go through some of the historical context. We're going to go through the foundations of the order itself, and then how we can sort of apply it to this group, the path of the ancients, because some of it we're not going to be able to apply because we're all at a distance. We're not living in a community together. But I want to try to structure the group as much as possible from this order. And I want to try to see all of you, and I don't know how to do that. I'm like staring at my own face talking, but I'm used to it at this point. I don't know if it's me that, if the recording is going to be showing me or if it's going to be showing everybody. Let's see. Can I make it so everyone is seen? I don't really know. All right, Tracy, I see you have your hand raised. I would definitely love for you to.
I think that we can put it on gallery
Yeah, how
viewing.
do we do that? How do we do that?
So when you do that, I think I'm trying to see it from the phone. Really wish I had my computer. See, right now, all I see is you. And
Yeah.
there has to be a way for us to, I guess the 3 dots that I see 8 participants. Okay. So where's our gallery view?
Oh, maybe this is it. Hey, we just had to swipe over. Okay, I'm so glad we figured that out. It was gonna bother me.
Good.
It was gonna bother me to just see my face talking the whole time, but now I see you all. Yay. Okay.
My
So
other
much
question
better.
is,
Yeah.
I have the Yah Scriptures PDF in front of me, but I don't know how to find the Order of the Ancients on it. Do we have a page number by chance?
So the Order of the Ancients shows up right after the writings of Abraham, and it's sometimes labeled as the writings of Eliyahu or the writings of Elijah. So it should be right after the writings of Abraham. As far as a page, I don't know if it's the same in the physical text as it is like in my physical scriptures. The writings of Eliyahu is 2111. But that could be something else on the online version. But yeah, I know it shows up differently. Like in my physical text, it is the writings of Eliyahu, but on my phone, it is the Order of the Ancients. So I don't know if that helps. And Haley, I see you had your hand up, maybe? Did you put it
Oh,
down?
I was just gonna mention earlier that from my end, where I'm recording, it says I see everybody equal.
Okay, cool.
So yeah.
Okay. Jess, I see you with your hand raised. The mic.
I am so not technically enriched.
That's okay.
I was just gonna say to, I don't remember who was asking, but I am also doing it off of Yah Scriptures. And if you go all the way to the bottom to the Apocryphas, the writings of Abraham is like the 4th one down, and Order of the Ancients is right under it.
Thank
So
you. I'm
I
not
just
looking at
wanted
the
to ask. I know. I just wanted to ask. We're talking about the writings of Abraham right now, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, that's where we're gonna start. All right, let's get into it. So I'm gonna I have a bunch of stuff highlighted. I'm going to skip around and I will say what verse I'm in, what chapter I'm in. So the writings of Abraham, just contextually, starts with the story of the birth of Abraham, and it's coming from the land of Ur, the land of the Chaldeans. This is a period where Nimrod basically ruled the world. And so we're going to explore just the setting of this. And I want to also show that just with this Order of the Ancients, there was an opposing force. So all through history, there's been an opposition to the secret knowledge of the Order of the Ancients, and In today's world, this would be like secret societies, like the Freemasons, and we can get into lots of that. But this secret information, there has been a good side of the secret hidden heavenly knowledge, but then there's also been a contradictory secret society since the beginning. So right off the bat, in the writings of Abraham, I'm going to focus on verse 2, because it says, "Behold, these things are sacred, wherefore send them not forth unto the children of men, but let them be for the edification of the elect, that your hearts may be turned towards the fathers, and you may draw close to them, and they to you." So the reason why this Path of the Ancients group is going to be sort of an extra level is because a lot of this information, we see it in this text, we see it in when Ezra was given his visions and he wrote his books, when Enoch was given his books, there were specific commands that certain information is available to all people, but then some other information, because it is higher in heavenly wisdom, it is reserved more for the elect. And it doesn't mean that people are better, but it's having a solid grasp on your faith and where you stand with the Father, and a correct heart posture before the Father. Because we're dabbling in temptation of, when you increase in knowledge and wisdom and you don't have a solid rock of your heart posture in the right place, it can easily bring you into pride, into arrogance. You can get into a twisting of making yourself your own God. And we see this in taking a lot of the wisdom of the Kabbalah and twisting it now into like self-worship and manipulation and even witchcraft. And so this is reserved for those who have proven that their heart posture is in the right place. This is reserved for those who are already solid and submitted to the Torah and stuff like that. So that's first. The next verse that I have highlighted is just to show you some of the opposition. So if we look in chapter 2, verse 3, I'm going to read much of that and go all the way down into the end of chapter 2. It's really short, but I'm going to read it through and it'll give you some kind of context of the level of power that was available back then, and all the way back, going back to Cain. So starting in verse 3, it says, "Moreover, Nimrod was a man of mighty power, for he was Master Mahan," which I think that's very similar to Master Mason, which is very similar to modern day Freemasonry and the elites keeping lots of this information. So he was Master Mahan, and in his hands he had the secrets of the ancients, as they had come down from Cain, wherein he knew the words of power and the signs for using them. And he had the Kodesh, or the set apart garments, which had been given unto Adam in the garden, in which was great power. All of this power did Nimrod use to gain after the manner of the secret combination. With his power he had set out to build a tower which would reach to the Shemaim, even the city of my father Enoch, which had been taken up, that he, Nimrod, might dispose Elohim from his throne, for Elohim had taken up his abode among the people of Hanuk. But Elohim frustrated the plans of Nimrod by confounding the language of him and his people, that they could no longer remember the sacred words, and they scattered forth over the face of the earth. So I'm going to pause there for a second. This sacred, powerful language is the Lashon Kodesh, the holy set apart language, and it is not spoken on the earth. A lot of people claim to have the purest version of Hebrew and whatever. Even the Abarit tongue, even the Paleo version, is not the Lashon Kodesh. It is almost like a shadow of the pure tongue. The pure tongue is something that we will have restored unto us at some point. But it is the language in which the Most High spoke all creation, and the closest we can get to it today is the Hebrew language. And it is it's almost like a code or an interlocking key that all of creation must obey, because all of creation was created using the Lashon Kodesh, and it's more frequencies. And but we don't know it. We don't know it. So if there's anybody today that claims that they have the perfect way to pronounce things, they're lying, because it's been lost. So back to verse 7. At that time, Nimrod came and established the city of Ur, which is the city of light. So in Hebrew, Ur or Or is the word for light. For he yet retained his determination to build a city to rival the city of Elohim, that the light and power might center in him. And through the ministration of Satan, he did receive again some of the words of power, and did recognize the secret combination among his people. But he had not the power as at the first, for the fullness of the pure language, the Lashon Kodesh, was not restored to him according to the decree of the Most High Elohim. So we're stopping there. This is basically to show from the beginning of time, Cain orchestrated and came into agreement with Hasatan about this secret combination, secret words of power, using symbols and sigils and certain words of the Hebrew language, of the pure tongue, to manipulate reality. And something that you can keep seeing if we're going to go through it, but we're not going to go into it. Part of the secret combination is the shedding of blood, the shedding of life force energy, the shedding of innocent blood specifically, and the power of that can then be taken and used for wicked gain. So Cain, his covenant was sealed with Hasatan for worldly gain when he slayed his brother Abel, innocent blood in exchange for power. That was the signing of the covenant with Hasatan. And so Cain was the first master Mahan. We see Lamech in scripture. He's in the canon, and we see him more in the writings of Abraham, but he was master Mahan. This was just like how the order of ancients was passed down from fathers and firstborn. It was this beautiful priesthood. The master Mahan and the secret combination and this wickedness is also passed down generation to generation, and they're at war with each other throughout all of history. So next we're going to skip to chapter 10 of the writings of Abraham, which in the physical, these chapters are really short. It's just one page over. So now we're getting into Abraham is recounting the birth of Noah, and I'm just reading through these couple of verses to show how Enoch established it, but then we see church fathers also being initiated into the same order. So in chapter 10, this is Noah, his birth and his childhood, and it says, "And the child grew and waxed strong in wisdom, and mighty in the power of the kahuna," which is the priesthood. "For he was initiated into the order of the ancients, and in his childhood he learned the rites and ordinances and the powers of the kahuna, with the signs and the tokens and the key words, wherewith he could call upon the powers of the Shemayim to combat the forces of the adversary." So this is basically a separate level of ancient wisdom that gives you more power and authority to command this world in accordance with the will of Yahuwah. And it's very, very protected because it's using words of power. It's using certain sort of ritualistic practices to align the body, to align the spirit, to become more spiritual in nature. And so a lot of this information that they knew, we don't have access to, and we're going to explore certain things together. But even back then, this came with a lot more power and authority over this reality. And so I'm going to continue with verse 2. "And when he was come of age, he took 12 wives and begat many sons and daughters, who grew up in righteousness and served Yahuwah all their days. Some died, and others were caught up to the city of Hanuk. But the next generation they corrupted themselves, for the daughters of Noah the daughters of Noah's sons did go forth and lay with the sons of men, which was an abomination in the eyes of Elohim. And so basically, we are seeing just the establishment of this set apart people that not only had access to greater heavenly wisdom and words of power and all of that, but we actually see that there was more than just two people that were called up that didn't experience death. So in the canon, the only two people that we see to experience this was Enoch himself. He walked so closely with Yahuwah that he was taken. And then Elijah, Eliyahu himself. And so we're going to see those writings as well. Those two men are the only ones we see in scripture that never tasted death. They were translated, transcribed from physical vessel right into heaven without ever dying. But the order of the ancients, the city of peace under Melchizedek, we're going to see a few times here. This is actually something that they sought after. This whole order was structured in a way of sacrificing your physical flesh to become more spiritual in nature and awakening, leveling up different levels of your spiritual abilities to the point where you walk so closely with Yahuwah that many were then able to be translated into heaven without experiencing death. And so a lot of this group is going to be seeking after that same level of set apartness and righteousness. So that's there. I'm going to switch to chapter 16, which is a couple pages away. Chapter 16, verse 3. Oh yeah, it's just really short. It just is, the remainder of the righteous had died or been caught up to Hanak's city prior to the time of the flood, and these 8 alone were saved. So this is talking about how in the time of right before the flood, there was the rest of the world completely bathed in sin and genetic manipulation and all sorts of garbage the fallen angels did. But there were still people of living righteously. And before the flood came, there was only Noah and his family left of righteousness, because everybody else had either already died or taken up to the city. Now on the same physical page, chapter 18, verses 3 and 4, and then I'm going to go into right into chapter 19. This is again just we're just kind of getting a contextual basis for the historical evidence of this. So starting 18 verse 3, moreover, Nimrod was instructed in all the secrets of the evil combination by his father. Wherefore Nimrod became a mighty man among the sons of men, and established his reign, and grew stronger and stronger in wickedness, after the order of the secret combination, which was from the beginning. For Nimrod spread his dominion over all mankind, except or save those who are in the city of Shalom, the city of peace. And so this is applicable today. We see secret societies and wicked people are the ones running the world, pulling the strings. Everything is illusion. Everything is deception. They are using the same secret combination, the same twisting of true heavenly wisdom, but they're twisting it. That's the knowledge of good and evil. So they're twisting it to manipulate this world. Yes, Tina.
So this keeps coming back into my head as you're talking about like sigils and things. There was
Mhm.
quite a while ago, and I'm sure you know this, but on YouTube I stumbled across a video about the emojis on our phones
Mhm.
and how they link or supposedly link with the sigils of Solomon, the signs of Solomon, which potentially came through the Queen of Sheba. I don't know how true that is, but it keeps popping back into my head as you're talking about it. And I remember being scared to death at one point of using those symbols on my phone. I realized that was a bit silly, but it was because they look like the ancient sigils of Solomon. Does that ring a bell?
Some of them might. I've never heard that, but Solomon is also known as the father of modern witchcraft. Just a little bit of contextual, like if you look at Solomon's writings, you see himself, basically, he was given all this great wisdom, but in order to marry the Queen of Sheba, he had to offer a sacrifice to Moloch. And so prior to that point, Solomon was given authority to control demons. And so we see this right in the text. He controlled and bound demonic beings, and he interviewed them to know what their weaknesses were, what their purpose was, how they specifically attacked the children of man, and where certain diseases come from and mental health problems come from. And so you see, originally, Solomon was given wisdom and authority from the Most High to have power over these demonic spirits. But the moment he sacrificed to Moloch in order to earn the Queen of Sheba's hand, he lost that power and authority. And those demonic beings that he once had power over began to torment him. And so he then began to, he basically fell from power, fell from grace, and he began all that wisdom that he had acquired about certain demonic spirits and how to manipulate them. He then began to draw up sigils, and this is where you see those witchcraft sacred geometry patterns and spells and incantations and stuff, because he had to figure out a way to keep those demonic spirits at bay that he once had Yahuwah ordained authority over them. Now those demonic spirits tormented him till the day he died, and he had to keep them at bay and try to keep them controlled with witchcraft. And so there's like the keys of Solomon, and it's the basis for so much of modern witchcraft today, of doing sigils and different spell work and different organs from different animals and how you burn them and where you position them and different crystals. All of that new age and witchcraft understanding and blood magic all stems back to Solomon, like, was a huge part of it, but that is also part of the secret combination that has been present since the time of Cain.
I mean, the First Kings chapter 10 was where I did my kind of research on this, and then went into like the conspiracy theory mode on YouTube and Google. But there's a lot to say that even Sheba, Queen of Sheba herself, is not the Sheba we think it is now. It would have been more like Arabia area. So some people say that Sheba is in Africa. It's actually more likely to be the other side of the Red Sea. And the bit that really stuck out to me was chapter 10, verse 14 in 1 Kings. And it says that Solomon received, after she left, Solomon received 666 talents of gold from her every year for that kind of connection. And it just, I mean, I'm not being funny. I know that it's not quite the same as the Revelation number, but it was just something that really stood out. And her name can actually also mean curse, even though it's closely related to Shabbat in the way that it's written. It can mean oath and it can mean curse. So when you were talking about the sigils, that's what kept coming into my head.
Yeah, we could do like a whole study on the relationship between Sheba and Solomon and their child that was present. And so there's a lot, but we don't want to get too far into it because we'll just get super derailed. Jess, I see your hand raised.
Just two quick things. I just wanted to agree. I saw something, I don't believe it was YouTube though, on the sigils with the emojis. What they did was they took the faces away and they took it down to the keystrokes. And then they kind of showed some stuff, and it was enough to make my hair stand up. So I kind of pray over my emojis. It sounds stupid, but I do have a question.
Yeah.
Is this why they call Solomon the most, like he has the most wisdom? I've heard of him like called like the smartest man, had the most wisdom. Like I've heard him talked about, and the expectancy of very much wisdom. And I just wonder if it's because he had both.
Yeah, so Solomon is known to being basically the wisest man to ever live. And it stems from when he was first coming to power as a boy. The Most High basically said, "What would you ask of me?" And he said, he came to the Father with a humble heart and was like, who am I to run your set apart people? I asked for wisdom to rule the people in wisdom according to your ways. And the Most High responds and says, you could have asked for wealth, you could have asked for dominion, you could have asked for long life, but you didn't, because you asked for wisdom. I will give you that, but I will also give you a kingdom unlike the world has ever seen or ever will see. And I will give you long life and prosperity, and peace on all sides. The problem is this is how also we see that the more you understand and the more knowledge you have, like, you are more prone to arrogance, more prone to pride, more prone to other blindnesses. And so we see, like, even though Solomon himself was the wisest man to ever live, he had weaknesses of his flesh. He still had this humanity that he had to battle, and he ended up falling. But yes, he was, and still statistically is known for being the wisest person to ever live. And I love, you see in the wisdom of Solomon, his deep, deep emotional bond to Lady Wisdom. And we might get into that text at a later date. But yes, he had a very close relationship with wisdom. So I'm going to continue. We're going to read into 19, all the way through. 19 is really, it's just 5 verses. So Shem ruled in the city of Shalom, for he was called Melchizedek, for he reigned as sovereign under his father Noah and was a Kohen of the Most High Elohim. I'm going to skip, or I'm going to just read through. After the departure of Ham from the presence of his father Noah, Shem and Japheth, or Japheth, dwelt together in peace under the benign rule of Noah. But in time, conflict arose among them, and Noah led the seed of Shem to a new land, which Yahuwah showed him, where they built a city, which they called Shalom, the city of peace. Noah invested his son Shem with the authority to reign as Prince of Peace, and Noah devoted his days to instructing his people after the order of the ancients. And his people dwelt in righteousness and worshiped Yahuwah their Elohim and served him. They established the order of the Shemayim, so the order of the heavens among them, and sought after the city of Hanuk. And Yahuwah came among them and ministered to them. And those who sought for the gain of this world went out from among them, for they held all things in common after the order of Hanuk, and no man was above his neighbor. So this starts to get into a little of the highlight of what exactly the order of the ancients was. So it was designed to be a mirror of the order of the heavens. So they, we'll see later on where they kept the feasts and the Shabbats, and they did lots of things together. But one of the absolute things that we'll see over and over and over as we go through this text, and then especially as we get into the order of the ancients, this was a community that did not keep possessions of their own. They considered money, they considered land, they considered produce, they considered everything that they had in this world to be community. There was no mine and yours. It was, everything was held in common. And so any people that desired to own their own possessions left this order because they wanted their own gain. One of these situations we see that we're not going to explore in this text, but Abraham and Lot separated because Lot wanted his own property. So he left Abraham and he went to go dwell with the land of Sodom and Gomorrah. And he still was righteous. He still kept the Torah and followed the ways of Yahuwah, but he could not be a part of the order of the ancients because he wanted possessions of his own. And so this is a heart posture that I want this group to establish, but we're not living in community right now. We can't physically pool all of our property together and all of our possessions together because it's physically impossible. But this is a heart posture that must be displayed by those within this community, that we take care of each other. We bear one another's burdens. Your burden is my burden. Your victory is my victory. My money is your money. And it's a lot of trust. But it's one of the absolute key things that was the heartbeat of this whole community, that everything that was given by Abba is for everyone to share. So we're going to skip to chapter 25, which in the physical text is just one page over. And I'm just going to read a little section out of verse 3. I'm just going to read verse 3. That's all. So it says, "In finding great happiness and peace and rest therein, I sought for the Barakoth, or the blessing of the fathers, and I received under the direction of Noah and Shem, whose instructions whereby I might enter into the order of the ancients." So this is Abraham talking. Abraham is now in this, I should give context. Now he is, in the first part, it says he is 10 years of age. So Abraham leaves his mother and travels to the city of peace to receive instruction by Noah and Shem into the order of the ancients. So he's still a child right now, getting ready for his teaching instruction. So going back to this, it says, I received under the direction of Noah and Shem those instructions whereby I might enter into the order of the ancients, and I became a rightful heir and Kohen Hagadol, which is high priest, holding the right belonging to the fathers, for I was ushered into the assembly of the firstborn, and tasted the fruits of life, the fruits of Chai of the Shemayim. So the assembly of the firstborn, or the order of Melchizedek, is this priestly line that is above and outside of the Levitical priesthood. And this ties all the way into Messiah. Messiah is not he had no right to the Levitical priesthood, but he is a Kohen Hagadol. He is a high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. And so this is that same priesthood. I am skipping now to 27, verse 2. Just trying to highlight the mentions of this order. So it says, although I had no sons of my own flesh, I had yet adopted 12 sons of those who were faithful to the order of the ancients, and foremost among these Eliezer of Damascus, who had come to the city of Shalom, seeking after the Barakoth of the fathers, and remained as my son. So that is just, while Abraham was raised in this city, raised in the order, and he began to establish this. And so we see a little bit of Eliezer mentioned in canon, and I love it because in canon we just see him as a servant. He's the man that Abraham sends to his family to go find a wife for Isaac. This is the same man. So Eliezer was another member of the order of the ancients, and he was an adopted son of Abraham, which I just found that very interesting. All right, we're skipping forward a little bit more to chapter 56, which is the most skipping we will do. Chapter 56. All right. So the reason why I'm highlighting this is to show a little bit of something that is present or taught within the order. So it says in verse 2, but the end of 3 years and the famine abated through the land, therefore Lot, my brother's son, and I went before Yahuwah in prayer after the manner of the ancients. And in an answer to our prayer, Yahuwah appeared unto me and said, arise. Okay. The whole point of that highlight is to talk about part of this, what understanding is that they had certain manners of prayer They met for worship and prayer at very specific times based on the alignment of solar bodies. We see this a little bit in the modern temple, how they had the hour of incense, which at 9 a.m. and at 3 p.m. they would offer their incense. They had hours of prayer. So this isn't just woo-hoo, woo-hoo. This is a divine alignment of our earthly vessels having less almost static, I guess, or less interference to interrupt the prayers. Not saying that your prayers are not heard at different times, but there's different ways in which you can pray to align your ruach more to the heavens. And so from my historical study that I have found, there are two ways in which like praying after the manner of the ancients. And so this is something that we would speak more about in this order. So one of the prayers of the ancients was, if you recognize the Paleo-Hebrew characters, the Hey, or not Paleo, the pictographic Hebrew. In the pictographic Hebrew, the Hey looks like a man with his hand raised to the sides like this. You can't really see me but it's the hands up like this. And so one of the ways in which they prayed after the order of the ancients was that they would stand with their hands raised to the sides like this. And this creates a sort of almost like a satellite dish where your body is open to the receiving signal. And so they would stand with their antenna straight up. And in this way, they would chant or repeat specific words of power. Often it was the name of the Father, Yahuwah or Yahusha, or Yahushua. There's different versions of that name, but it's more than just the name. It's a frequency that sort of unlocks or punches a hole through the veil in a way. So one of the manners of the ancients is they would pray or meditate with their arms raised, and they would breathe in and breathe out, meditating on just the name of the Father, and they would speak the name of the Father over and over with their breath, or the name of Yahusha over and over with their breath. And this was one of the secret powers, or the words of power, and this was serving as a sort of like a wormhole of, like, you have such a vast distance between the heavens and the earth in a way, but it was a shortening, like you are using that word as a key to directly remove the veil. So this is something that we would practice, and practicing how to stand in this way to bring our bodies into agreement with this. The other order or manner of the ancients in which they prayed was actually completely silent. It was praying in the spirit. And so they would go, and often they would take vows of silence. They would agree not to speak externally. But it was a very meditative way of repeating certain words like shalom over and over within their spirit to allow it to fully just be absorbed into their being. And so this sort of either like chanting physical way in which they prayed, or also the secret, more internal secret space, silent prayer, praying in the spirit, are two different ways that I have found that these ancient orders used to specifically pray. And I can't claim to know it all, because a lot of this information is lost. So much of this information is lost. But those are two ways in which prayer is a little bit differently, because now most of prayer is praying out loud or folding your hands, or there's different ways in which it's done. But we see very specific tools based on the time of day in which you pray, the direction in which your body is facing, and how you position your body, all influence the type of prayers that one is trying to achieve. So I think in this group, we would explore that sort of information a little bit more. Let's see, we're almost done with the writings of Abraham. We're going to skip to chapter 77. All right, so I'm going to read verses 6 and 7, because this is where I believe we are today. So much of the true fullness of the order of the ancients is prophetically destined to be lost, and we'll actually see that a little bit when we get into the writings of Eliyahu. But there is a prophetic, just like through history, we see this prophetic, it's bound that the name of the Father is lost. It is, many of the books are lost. The fullness of the Besorah, or the good news, is lost. But in the end, in this final generation that rises up, there's prophetic destiny that the name of the Father is brought back into remembrance. And these hidden books are brought back into the remembrance of the people, and they're cherished and loved. But this fullness of the Besorah and the order of the ancients is also brought back into remembrance. So in verse 6, it says, this is chapter 77, verse 6. Moreover, in the last days, I'm going to go. Moreover, in the last days, I will raise up out of the loins of thine heir a choice seer, through whom the fullness of my Besorah shall be restored to the earth, and all things shall be restored as in the beginning. For upon him shall rest the kahuna of his fathers, and he shall commence the organization of that Kodesh order, which was in the beginning of the world, which shall be consummated before the Ben, the son of Elohim, shall walk again upon the earth. Right before that, it talks about from the loins of Messiah, or from the loins of Abraham shall proceed Hamashiach, the son of Elohim. So this is actually two different people. I don't know who this choice seer is who's going to fully restore the order. No idea. But it talks about Mashiach, and then it talks about in the last days, a seer rising up that will restore the order, will restore the fullness of the Besorah before the son of Elohim walks again on this earth. So before the coming of the king a second time, this understanding of this order of the heavens, the order of Enoch, the fullness of the Besorah will be something that we begin to know in fullness. It is prophetic destiny. And so I fully believe that this is partly why this understanding is being brought back, because we are this generation. That's my personal conviction. You will have to take that back to the Father, but it lines up with, we're waking up to his true names, these hidden texts, the fullness of the spirit of the law rather than the physical law, the fullness of the good news. So I think that's for us, and I chose to highlight that because I personally just love that. All right, the last thing in the writings of Abraham, we're going to get into chapter 97 through 99, and I'm going to read all the way through. They're very short. All right, so I'm just going to read all the way through chapter 7 to 99. They're short chapters, and then after this, we'll pause, we'll discuss, we'll talk, ask questions before we then get into the Order of the Ancients, which is like the meat of how the organization was actually set up, how people entered into the order, all that. So I'm just going to start reading chapter 97. Therewith I departed from Melchizedek, rejoicing in his barakah and his blessing, for he was a man of faith who wrought righteousness, and as a child he feared Elohim. And by his faith he stopped the mouths of lions and quenched the violence of fire, when those of the evil combination sought to destroy him from off the face of the earth. So pausing, again, all through history is this evil combination, and the order of the ancients is the direct power and authority given to the elect to combat this super powerful wickedness of the world. Most of the general populace just doesn't have the power or the understanding to be able to combat that. But Melchizedek and the order of the ancients is the people that are given that authority to combat this power. Verse 2, therefore, having been approved of Elohim, he was ordained a Kohen HaGadol, a high priest, after the order of the covenant with Elohim, made with Chanuk, which is after the order of the firstborn, even our father Adam. For this Kodesh order came not by man, nor the will of man, neither by father nor mother, neither by beginning of days nor end of years, but of Elohim. For it was established in the beginning of the earth by the ancients of days. Wherefore it is called the order of the ancients, and it was delivered unto men from the beginning by the calling of Elohim's own voice, according to his own will, through the voice of his kahuna, his priesthood. And as many as believed on his name and were faithful until they had obtained. 98. Behold, these could transcend the veil according to the will of Elohim and commune with the general assembly and ecclesia of the firstborn. This is the people who were translated into heaven outside of dying. So the people who were initiated into the order of Enoch, the order of the ancients, had the ability to be in regular communion with Enoch and this city. It was an ability to experience the spiritual realm outside of the main body of Israel. For Elohim had sworn unto Hanuk and his seed with an oath by himself that every one being ordained after this order and calling should have power by faith to break mountains, to divide the seas, to dry up waters, to turn them out of their course, to put at defiance the armies of nations, to divide the earth, to break every band, to stand in the presence of Elohim, to do all things according to his will, according to his command, subdue principalities and powers, and this by the will of the Ben, the Son of the only begotten of the Father, which is from before the foundation of the world. And men having this faith coming up into this order of Elohim could be translated and taken up into the Shemayim. So this text, I have the whole chapter highlighted. It literally is talking about this extra ability, the extra authority that this order is given over this realm, over principalities, over beings, that even the fallen angels would cower before the power given to this specific order. 99. Now Melchizedek was a Kohen after this order, which is the Kodesh order of Elohim. And so something else is you'll find that within the order itself, there were different levels, okay? As people entered in, they had access to certain information. And then as they leveled up, they were given more information, more authority, more leadership within the organization. And it was this graduation of the spiritual nature, this growing in wisdom and understanding, is what allowed for the being to be opened up to these greater mysteries. Not everybody in the order had access to the same. And we saw early on that nobody was better than anybody else. It wasn't an element of pride whatsoever. It wasn't because new members in the order were less than the people. It was literally by the hand of the Ruach and the power and authority and the wisdom evidenced in basically a supernatural pouring out of this heavenly wisdom. And the absolute chasing of this order was to completely shed the physical flesh and become fully awakened spiritual beings, to the point where they walk so closely with Elohim that they have access to the heavenlies at all times, to when that they can be translated. Kim, I see your hand raised.
Sorry, just wanted to say it's amazing. Dulcinette was actually mentioning how the Masonic temple is very much copied on this, because everybody wears a tuxedo. They all look the same, so it doesn't matter what class you are, but you still have to go through all those different steps, and each step then you get given a bit more knowledge and a bit more knowledge until you obviously get to the top. So very much how that was copied obviously from that, but on the opposite, where this was holy, that was satanic, if you want to put it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It is a perfect, you have this balance of heavenly wisdom that graduates as you level up as a spiritual being. And then the opposite side of it, they even have like the pillars that mimic the temple. They have so much of truth and how this is organized, but it is a twisted, backwards, manipulative, evil, wicked practice, but you see the similarities. And so this ancient, wicked, secret combination order is what we see in Freemasonry, and it goes all the way back to the Master Mahan. And so the good, the order of Elohim, the order of Chanuk, has similar levels of it has nothing to do with somebody being any better, but it's as the flesh is purged and as you become closer in line with the Father, you are given greater access. But yes, it's very intriguing to look at how the Freemasons have structured their organization, because it's definitely not for nothing. So verse, let's see, I'm just going to go back to the beginning of 99. Now Melchizedek was a Kohen after this order, which is the Kodesh order of Elohim. Therefore he obtained peace and shalom and was called the Prince of Peace. And his people wrought righteousness and obtained the Shemaim. They obtained the heavens, for they sought for the city of Chanuk, which Elohim had before taken, separating it from the earth, having reserved it unto the latter days, or the end of the world. So this is the latter days. For Elohim hath said and sworn with an oath. So when Yahuwah swears with an oath, it's serious. This is real, like there's no arguing it. For Elohim had said and sworn with an oath that the Shemaim and the earth should come together again, and the sons of Elohim be tried even by fire. And thus Melchizedek, having established righteousness, was called the sovereign of the Shemaim by his people, or in other words, the sovereign of peace, the king of peace. And they communed with those in the city of Chanuk and in the city of Peleg, which is a descendant, and had access to them and were Baruch all their days. So this set apart people literally had extra access to the heavens all of their days, because that was the goal, was seeking after the heavens, seeking after this set apart nature, seeking after becoming fully awakened spiritual beings. All right, so that concludes the writings of Abraham, and we're going to go now into the writings of Eliyahu. But I want to stop and see if there's any thoughts, any questions, anything that's on your mind before we get into, because that was like kind of the historical basis. Now what we're getting into with the writings of Eliyahu, this is right before Eliyahu is getting ready to be translated. He was the carrier of the keys of this order, and he's passing them on to Elisha. And this is him basically passing the keys, passing on this order before he's getting ready to be translated. And he's basically giving Elijah how to now continue this order. So before we get into that, I want to hear your thoughts about what we're doing so far and if it's making sense. Or let me know your thoughts if you have them.
It is making sense. I'm trying to follow along since I'm on my phone on Zoom. And which means I can't use my Yah scriptures on my phone. I tried to find the PDF, but I found it, but it has ads. And so it keeps going through. So I was wondering if you could put it up on your, like if it was on your computer, we could all see what you're looking at as you read it.
If I do that, so I can screen mirror, but then I won't be able to see anybody who has their hands raised. I won't be able to see anything other than that.
I'm sure we can all figure it out. I thought I would mention it just in case.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I tried to do before, but it makes it hard for me. And then if somebody was trying to come in, I wouldn't be able to see it. I wouldn't be able to see any chats. I wouldn't be able to see anybody trying to speak or anything like that.
So I have this PDF called The Apocalypse of Elijah. Is that it or the?
It's not it.
Okay.
It's a great book, The Apocalypse of Elijah. It's very cool, but that's not the one we are looking at. So it could be called the Writings of Elijah, or it also could be called the Order of the Ancients. I mean, if everybody wants to just unmute their mics, I guess, and don't do the whole raising your hands thing, just we want to speak at taking turns and giving each other turns to speak, and we don't want to be all talking at the same time. I can do the screen mirroring to go through the Writings of Elijah, because there's actually a lot more. Like, I have almost the entire book highlighted, and we're going to be going through a lot more reading in the Writings of Elijah. So let's see if I can get to it. I'm not going to be able to call on you guys. So that's kind of the downfall of this.
I haven't been able to find a PDF copy of that next one just yet.
Okay. All right. Well, then let me get it.
I can kind of keep an eye on hands and things too.
Oh yeah, actually, yeah. Haley, can you take over moderating? That way if people have their hands raised, you be the one to stop and let me know. Because I won't be able to see anything. Let's see, share screen. All right. So that I now can't see anybody, but you should be able to see now. See the text itself. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so I actually don't have to have the whole phone. I can hold the phone in my hand. And you're not gonna care because you're not looking at me anymore. All right. So I'm gonna try to, as I read along, move it, but unfortunately you're gonna have to, like, you can see where I'm moving it. I'm going to just honestly read. Let's see. I'm going to read all of chapters 1 and 2, and then we'll start skipping around because it's a lot of good information. So we'll just start reading. The record of Eliyahu the Tishbite, which he wrote for his Talmud, or his followers, his student, Elisha, whom he called from his field in Abel Meholah, unto the Kodesh order of Elohim. Behold, I, Eliyahu, write this record with my own hand, and no man shall see it until I have ascended into the Shemayim. Then shall my authority and the keys of my kahuna, which is the kahuna of the fathers, pass to my son Elisha by right of lineage and obedience. This kahuna came down to me from the fathers by lineage, for I am a descendant of Yehoshua, the son of Nun. This is Joshua, who was a descendant from Ephraim, the son of Joseph, through whom the rights of the firstborn descended into Yisrael. So I'm going to pause there. Something that Ephraim was really known as a place of prophets. Okay, so Shemuel, the prophet Shemuel, was from Ephraim. The field, or the place of the Zophim, which was talked about yesterday, was in Ephraim. So Ephraim is a place where many prophets came from. Verse 5, these rights I received when I was but a lad from my father before he was martyred for the testimony of Yahuwah. And according to the word of Yahuwah, I have appointed Elisha, who is my adopted son, to be my successor in bearing of this work. So I think this is really, really important, because we see many times all through scripture where there isn't actually a blood relation, but a spiritual adoption is just as powerful as blood relation. And so somebody can be adopted into the firstborn, even though they are not physically. So I think that's really important, because Elisha was not the biological son of Elijah. But he still was given the rights of the inheritance. Let's see, where was I? Verse 6, nevertheless, not all of my rights shall rest upon him, for Yahuwah has said, behold, my servant Eliyahu shall not die, but shall bear with him the keys of this ministry to the city of the Shemaim until the last days, when I shall send him to one of his seeds, whom I shall rise up to bear the fullness of this ministry again among the sons of men. But he shall leave with Elisha those keys necessary to continue his work in organizing the schools of the Nebim, this is the schools of the prophets, and the order of Hanuk, that the sons of the Nebim may continue to live after the Kodesh order of Elohim. So we are literally right now we're studying the book of Yochanan, who was given the spirit of Elisha, the spirit of Elijah, of Eliyahu. So Yochanan was this prophet risen up with the spirit of Eliyahu to restore the fullness of the order and the kahuna. This is my interpretation of this. And this is one of the reasons why I'm so excited to get into chapter 2, because Yochanan began this bringing about of the reign of the Ruach and the true understanding of Torah, the true corrections. And so we are now living in this time and age where we can begin to understand the fullness of these things. So moving on into chapter 2, does anybody have their hands raised at this point before we get into chapter 2?
No, we're good.
Okay. I'm just going to read the fullness of chapter 2. Therefore, my son Elisha, I leave for you this book of the order by which you may govern the order of Hanuk, for I have organized and governed this order according to the revelations of Yahuwah to me, and under the direction of his Ruach HaKodesh. I give you these instructions. Everyone who desires to enter the order of Hanuk must be one who loves Yahuwah, his Elohim, with all his heart, might, mind, and strength, and one who loves his fellow man as himself, according to the word of Yahuwah through Moshe. So right there, the very first stipulation given of if you enter into this secret order, this hidden wisdom, you must absolutely love Yahuwah with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. Verse 3, he must covenant, must absolutely agree, bind himself to live the Torah of consecration. So Torah is a word that can mean different things. The Torah of consecration, and to hold all things in common with his brethren according to the pattern set by our first parents. For when they came forth from the garden, they divided not up the land, but held it in common until their prosperity through wickedness began to lay claim to it for themselves. So the first stipulation to entering into this is loving Yahuwah and loving your neighbor as yourself. And the very next thing is the covenant, the Torah of consecration. So this law that you covenant yourself to, that you are agreeing that everything belongs to each other. It is not mine and yours. This is it is one of the absolute foundations of this group, that what Yahuwah gives is for the family, and it is all belonging to everybody, which is really, really important. Verse 4, behold, this private ownership of the property came to pass through the teachings of that evil combination which was organized by Cain, that men might get gain for themselves because of the love of Elohim, and the man is not in them. He who enters the order must be one who is dedicated to seeing the face of Elohim and receiving from him the promise of eternal lives. So this calling is not going to be for everybody, okay? He who enters must be dedicated to seeing the face of Elohim. This is entering into spiritual things, a spiritual nature, that you're willing to let go of things of this world in order to seek the face of the Father.
All
He
right.
must keep.
Tracy.
Yeah, what's up?
Tracy.
Yeah, go ahead, sis.
You're still on mute, Tracy.
So I so love the idea and heart about that. Like I think that would be just the funnest thing. Like gardening together, doing like literally
Mhm.
everything together and helping. Like I see that as like a family,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But as a woman and as a wife, my husband is not going to go down with something like, so I, maybe that's just, and maybe somebody else has this question, but I'm like, I'm having like a mind debacle about how that's even going to work. He doesn't even like super enjoy my faith. He thinks lots of crap.
So that's something that, like I said before, we aren't physically in a place where we can do that. We are not in a place where we can share labor, share meals, share money, share, like we're not physically in the place to where we can walk in complete obedience with that. And just as the Father is gracious and there's different levels up to this priesthood, this kahuna, this order, we are not going to be able to reach the fullness. This information, so much of what we're going to be trying to explore, we will not be able to achieve without divine hand, divine revelation. Part of this even is the calendar. Like, we're all at different places. We all like, so there are certain elements of this, and like being able to pool our resources and live together in community, we're not going to be able to achieve in fullness. However, what we can do is agree to have that heart posture of generosity, of truly bearing one another's burdens, that what I have, and like when you're in an unequally yoked marriage, and you're not the only one, sis, that you have to also consider somebody who's not going to want to get all into this. What you personally have, your own personal heart posture, it can be your time, your energy. It is a heart posture more than physical obedience right this second, because we just are not in a place to be able to fully achieve what this is. And so my
That makes me
goal,
feel so much better because that is where my heart, like honestly, the amount of intimacy and like that actually is y'all.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
so when you're sharing your heart and giving so much right here, I mean, I could never say these things in that
Mhm.
scenario. So
Yeah.
that really helps. But there's other hands raised. I'm gonna go ahead and mute. Thank you for that, Oria.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want, but real quick, I do want to say, like, as we seek this obedience, so what's happening right now as the Father is presenting us with a doorway, it's not required, people don't have to walk through it, but He's inviting us to step into a new way of thinking, a new heart posture. And right now, in the physical reality, we cannot operate in full obedience to a number of these things, being in different places, different time zones. We'll get into more things that actually we cannot physically do. But as we adopt the heart posture, the spiritual heart of this group,
Mhm.
I believe it will begin to manifest the ability for us to begin to walk in greater obedience in the physical, in the Father's timing, but it first manifests in the spirit before it will ever manifest in the physical. And that's the pattern of the Shemaim. So it's spiritual first and physical. So the heart of this group isn't to necessarily create a physical order, a physical rules, physical things that it is a heart posture first. And I believe as we all come together as a family and adopt this heart posture to the best of our abilities, it will begin to manifest in the physical reality without us having to try. So I'll be stopping there, and then Haley, whoever's next. Yeah.
Yeah, we have Jessica and then Tina. If I could just say really quick, on that, I think that, and I know you've mentioned this before, Oriah, that, well, right now we're talking about the here and now, but when the time comes in the physical for this to come into its fullness, I think those of us who are unequally yoked, you know, our spouses, they're either gonna be all in, come to a place of repentance, and they're going to be all in, or they're going to be separated, from us at that point, whenever that time is. That's my perspective on that. That's all I wanted to say.
Mm.
But we have Jessica and Tina.
All right, Jess, what's up, sis? I'm going to stop this screen recording for a minute, this screen sharing. I can go back to it. I want to see you guys. It's so weird to talk and not see you guys' faces. I can go back to the screen recording.
I just
But
wanted
yeah,
to say, as much as, am I muted? Okay. As much as I'm so excited and cannot wait to congregate and all live together, I think that we are scattered specifically for a reason. I think it'd be much easier for us to be targeted at this point right now. I think that that's the reason why it's not quite his timing yet. And that falls with a lot more stuff that I'm sure we'll get into at a later time.
Yeah, all in his timing for sure. What's up, Tina?
Well, partly I'm coming into agreement, but something he's been showing me sort of echoes what you were saying, but kind of adding to that is from a spiritual perspective. I'm one of them people that wants to donate, even when I've got no money to donate, and I've been taken advantage of time and time and time again. And he keeps saying to me, stop, donate when I tell you to donate, that kind of thing. But like you were saying about the Shemayim, it happens in the Shemayim, it comes to us, and as humans, we're quite impatient. And I get where you were coming from, Tracy. It was like hearing that, like, you want to do it. I want to do it. But I'm not in a physical position to do that right now either. So it's like, and wanting to, but not quite getting there. But he said to me, it's prayer, it's praise, it's groups like this, it's sharing your information in groups like this, and not just what we're talking about now, but just in the groups in general, because there's newer people coming in, and obviously I agree time is short, and whatever we can pass on, but also in that loving community, helping each other, not just like we've all experienced in the past, people throwing it at you and shouting at you, and it's doing it in that community of love. And that's what I feel in our group, and I'm really excited about that. But yeah, I'm so wanting to be there and doing it, but I agree that we've just got to kind of one day at a time, just one day, and one thing that we can give somebody, one thing that we can share with somebody, one thing we can do to make somebody's day a bit better when we're all feeling a bit rubbish or whatever. And I think that's just the building of it, those little building blocks of it. That's how he's been showing me. And I have to still sit there sometimes and remember that that's what I'm there to do.
Yeah.
And not run away with myself.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to kind of like confirm, treasures and valuables in a spiritual sense is almost never money. It's almost never physical possession. When Lady Wisdom says, "Those who seek me, I will fill their treasuries," she says, "My fruits are more valuable than rubies, than choice gold and silver." If her valuables, if treasures of the Most High are not physical treasures, it is wisdom, it is community, it is valuables outside of physical possession. Yes, caring for the needs of the physical body is something that we're going to do as a family, but first and foremost, it's not about money. It's about your time and your love and wisdom and walking alongside each other and making yourself available to others in that way. And so I'm going to call in you, Noella. Give me 1 second. When Messiah is addressing Peter, of, "Do you love me?" He says it three times to counteract his denial of him. But Peter, do you love me? Then feed my sheep. Do you love me? Feed my sheep. This is not just caring for the physical needs. This is being there and present and feeding the spiritual nature of those who are like coming into the faith, the babes of the faith, of being able to give them milk, transitioning them to solid food. This is not physical sustenance. So right now, while we're in this stage, yes, there will be, we're going to have ministry finances and we're going to help the way that we can. But that's so, so low on the priority list. Feeding the sheep and feeding the body is the spiritual food and the love and that sort of thing. So, Noella, what's up?
Okay. So I'm not trying to be controversial, but I don't think the father would like me to leave my husband. So if if that's like a like caveat of like to join this community, you have to divorce your husband, then it's not for me.
That
Even though I love
don't
you
know.
all.
That was not what Haley was saying at all. She was more of
Okay.
saying
Like the father is not saying
She-
to leave your
she was more saying that is, for instance, when the wheat and the tares are separated at that moment, nobody's going to be like, oh, hey, okay, I'll make that decision now. No, that's not happening. That is Yahuwah at that moment, right, Oria?
Yeah, so basically what I have found is there's two sides of this, okay? The unbelieving spouse is made holy because of the believing spouse. And if you have an unequally yoked marriage where the unbelieving spouse is willing to dwell with the spiritually strong one, that is perfectly blessed. And it is something where the whole marriage is made holy and the children of the marriage is made holy. It is never, ever, ever ordered by the Most High that you need to split up because there's a specific stipulation for those unequally yoked marriages.
okay.
However, what I've also experienced is darkness and light cannot dwell together. So if a spouse is truly tied into the darkness, the more that believing spouse comes into the light, that unbelieving spouse will likely leave on their own, or the marriage will end. And in the end, in the very end of the wheat and the tares, everybody, when the veil is torn, when Yahuwah himself says, I tell you, every knee will bow and every tongue will confess. This is those who have passed. This is those who are still living at the time. When the veil is torn and Messiah comes and all eyes see the light clearly, those who have been on the fence, so unequally yoked marriages, they will be fully given the light to be able to make their choice first and foremost. And those who are agreeing with a believing spouse, their souls, they will be brought into the light. But those who are truly wicked, those who love wickedness and love the darkness, will flee from the light and they will be split. If you're in a marriage to somebody who is truly wicked, there will be a tearing away because darkness and light cannot come into agreement. So I, and my own personal experience, was in an unequally yoked marriage to a person who was so riddled by demons that and this is my prideful or whatever, I really did the utmost best that I could. But the more I pursued light with the Father and came closer to the Father, my husband got angrier and more
abuse,
controlling
and
and
I think
more
abuse
violent.
is different. Like obvious,
Yes,
like that's a completely different situation. My
yes,
husband,
yes.
like, he is not like he says like Jesus and like typical like Christian man, and he's a good guy. So he's not like wicked. That's not what I'm
Yeah,
getting at. I'm just saying
yeah,
like if he's never like gets to the point of like following Torah, to me as his wife, I'm not trying to control that or like control him in any way. And I also was saying, because it sounded earlier like nobody said like leave your husband if he doesn't, but it sounded earlier like when Haley said like you'll spread apart. I'm like, no, I'm not.
yeah. No, it'll happen naturally. So if the union is one of where it cannot be reconciled, two may not walk together lest they be agreed. And if you have somebody filled with darkness that does not want something to do with the light, they will naturally break apart and it's nothing that you can do. But that's not including just being at two different places. If somebody's unbelieving or not at the same place as you and willing to walk with you, that covering applies. The marriage is made holy, the children are made holy. And in the end, the two are still one flesh. They are still one spirit, and that will be, the whole union will be sanctified. So it's not something you ever have to worry about. You don't have to worry about making that choice. If a marriage is meant to fall apart, it will do so naturally by the believing spouse walking in righteousness. It's
Okay.
not something you're going to ever have to do.
Okay.
Um,
I just wanted to
yeah.
say that right, because I don't think Haley like meant anything bad by it. Haley has nothing but good intent, but I just felt like I need to say this right now so there's no surprises later.
Yeah, I was saying, yeah, I was meaning exactly what Araya was saying there. I wasn't saying like you need to leave your husband. I was just saying naturally they're either going to be drawn to the light and
Mhm.
come into full repentance, or naturally they're just going to leave, separate themselves.
Or you'll live peacefully, and that's I know a lot of people who are in I would say like me and my husband, I don't consider us different religions. I would say that the language we use is different. But I know people who are even in different religions, or they were Christians when they got married and then one stopped being a Christian and they still like it still works out. So I was like, nope. And
Yeah.
then
I'm
I
glad
felt
you
like I needed to assert that, like, so that later you're not like, where'd she go? And get it like clear in my head.
Well, I'm glad you got the clarity on that. Because that's important. Kim.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I just honestly believe, and we know it, that as we come towards the last days, the final days, that as the chaos starts to break out and the angels start to pour the vials out, and that I think that when the fruits of the Spirit in each of us and all of us and all of you, all of you have so much fruit of the Spirit that, as you said, if it cannot happen, it will not. But I believe that as the times get tough, we're all intelligent and we're going to see it, and they're going to start to see those fruits shining out in each and every one of us and every one of you. And I believe that if there's any hope, they will see it. But you know what? I have to be drawn to that light, like a moth drawn to a light. So either they're going to find the darkness and disappear, but I believe that they will see the light and the fruit and the goodness in you, and they will say, I want some of that. I need to have whatever that is. I need it. I need to have some of that. So that's my belief. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I agree with that. And I think the more he's a scholar, like he's went to Bible school. Well, now he's in school for engineering but so I think like eventually like everything will connect for him. But even if he like stays stuck and doesn't, and just like believes that he's saved through Jesus, that's fine with me. Like I'm completely happy with that, because there's people whose husbands are abusive, or like, if you do this, I'm leaving, or I don't know. But I wasn't trying to call anyone out. I just was like, I need to set my boundary, because it's better to set it earlier than later.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. I'm checking up with the chat. Family's the first ministry. Yes. Was this sorry, I'm just checking up with the chat real quick. All right. Before we get back into the text, does anybody else have anything in relating to what we've already covered in the writings of Abraham in relation to the order of the ancients, or shall we keep going? Keep going. All right. Where did I leave off? Oh, I think I must have just left off in chapter 2, at the end of chapter 2. Okay. I don't know. I'm going to go back to screen sharing and we'll get back to the text. Share screen. We gotta hurry. We're going on an hour and a half now. All right. Yeah, we didn't get all the way through chapter 2. We only got to a little bit. All right. I'm going to just start at verse 5. He who enters the order must be one who is dedicated to seeing the face of Elohim and receiving from him the promise of eternal lives. He must keep the commandments and statutes of Yahuwah, his Elohim, to do what is good and upright in the sight of Elohim, according to that which he commanded through Moshe, the Torah giver, and through his servants, the prophets, the Nabim. He who seeks to enter the Kodesh order of Elohim must be one who loves that which Yahuwah loves and hate that which Yahuwah hates. He must keep all the evil far from him and love to do good, that his works may bear testimony of his righteousness before Elohim and man. He must be governed by the principles of truth, righteousness, and justice in all that he does, while in this Mishkan of clay, this temple of clay. They're literally talking about the body as a temple already. Having repented of his inclination to follow after the dictates of the flesh, the carnal mind, no longer doing evil according to the selfishness and jealousy and contentious spirit which dwells in the natural man. So this is speaking to this desire to live in contrary to the flesh, believing that this temple, we are temples for the Father, we are made of clay, but we must fight the contrary spirit that dwells in flesh, to selfishness, jealousy, contention. So we're seeing that already. Verse 9, every member of the order must be dedicated to bringing into a bond of mutual love all those who are striving to live after the Kodesh order of Elohim. So this is talking about there will be those who are new coming in, but every member must strive to be dedicated to bringing each other into a bond of mutual love and peace, family. Verse 10, to live after the order of the ancients means that they must live in the community of Elohim's elect, holding all things in common and loving one another as themselves. Yes, they must unite in one heart and one mind, for only this can Zion be built upon in its perfect order and the name of our Elohim be glorified. So this is literally talking about Zion manifesting because we are coming together in one mind and one accord. And I'm going to pause real quick and just reference, you can go back and check. But in Ezra or Esdras 2, Ezra is given a vision of Lady Zion, who is first mourning, and then it manifests into a glorious, radiant city. And the angel says that he brought Ezra out into a field, because when Zion manifests, it cannot be built on anything built with human hands. It is built by the Father alone. And so Zion manifests, the city manifests when we come together in agreement, in truth and in love, within the Spirit as one family. So I'm going to go again at verse 11. Yes, they must unite in one heart and one mind, for only this can Zion be built up in its perfect order and the name of our Elohim be glorified. Those entering the Kodesh order must have shown by their works their desires to live according to all that Elohim has revealed, to keep all his commands, to perfect their lives according to Elohim's Kodesh order, that they might be sanctified by the blood of the covenant to the renewal of their spirits and their bodies. Interesting. This came before Messiah was ever sacrificed, but the Besorah was preached from the beginning of time. They believed that the blood of the covenant was going to be shed and they could accept salvation even before Messiah ever came. 13, they must love all the children of light, each according to his position in the house of Elohim. For those who live the highest Torah are the most able to be loved and so forth, even unto the lowest Torah of Elohim. This is hinting at people in the order. It's not that anybody's better. but those who walk closer with Elohim have greater access to his love, his light, and his wisdom, and all of those things. And it's all based on mutual love. Verse 14, they must hate the works of darkness and avoid intercourse with the sons of Belial. This is not talking about sexual intercourse here. This is talking about an intimate knowing of the sons of Belial. So Belial is a name given to Hasatan. It is, there are different names, Hallel, Belial, but Belial is basically known as the spirit of rebellion, almost the spirit of deception and pride and rebellion. So that's part of this. So to avoid intercourse with the sons of Belial isn't talking about physical intimacy. It's talking about mixing your spirit to know them well, each according to the measure of his guilt. For Elohim will bring every work into judgment, and those who associate with the wicked will be condemned with them. So I'm going to pause there, and we're going to skip around a little bit in verse, or maybe we'll read all of verse 3 now. That's pretty short, or chapter 3. But this is not talking about don't bring yourselves into contact with people that are wicked, because that's not what it's talking about. And I think it actually addresses this in the next chapter. So I'm going to continue. He who loves the truth and truly desires to live after the order of the Shemayim must declare his willingness to be united to the congregation of Yahweh's elect, and must consecrate by covenant all of his mind, all of his strength, and all of his wealth to the community of Elohim, so that his mind may be purified by the truth of Yahweh's precepts, his strength controlled by Yahweh's perfect ways, and his wealth disposed of in accordance with Yahweh's just design. He must order his life according to the pattern which Yahweh has given, observing the hours of worship, the Shabbathoth, and the appointed times, so the Sabbaths and the appointed times to do them, neither omitting the feast or neglecting the fasts of Yahuwah. That's important. We're going to talk about group fasting. He must be one whose heart is knit unto the ordinance of Elohim's Torah, who will strive diligently to preserve them in purity, neither breaking the Torot, which is the direct laws, changing the ordinances, or neglecting the everlasting covenants of our Elohim. So I'm going to pause that and stop sharing for a second. So I'll make sure. Yeah. So this is not talking about don't associate yourself, don't keep yourself away from the world and people who are in darkness, but it's specifically talking about don't be so tied up with the ways of the world that it begins to influence who you are. And this little bit about the hours of worship, the Shabbathoth, the appointed times, omitting the feasts, and blah, blah, blah. Not blah, 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 but that idea. We are living in a time and place where we're spread all over the world. There's going to be different times. We can't all gather together at a specific time for prayer because we're in different time zones, and that's not going to be possible. The same way in which there's a lot of confusion and not understanding and loss of information and clarity when it comes to being in agreement on a calendar. So we have different Sabbaths being kept. We are going to have likely times when we keep even the feast days differently or different capabilities. So in this specific way, this group is also like, we can't pool our property right now. We can't pool our resources right now. But something this group will be doing is we're going to be studying the hours of worship and the hours of prayer, respectively, of understanding why they gathered at these specific times, what is going on in the heavenly realms at the same time. And we're going to try, like, my 9 a.m. hour of prayer is going to be different than everybody else's. And so and it's not like a requirement. You're not going to be kicked out of the group, but we're going to begin to understand the different times in which they gathered for prayer and why. We're going to speak on and learn more about what Sabbath is, why. We're going to understand its presence from the beginning of time and how we can keep that in the spirit, even if we're not all keeping it on the same day. We're going to talk about the appointed times and the feast days. not just the physical practices of the feast days, but the spiritual mirror of what's going on in the heavens, what they represent in a spiritual sense, and how we can apply that even if we're not keeping it on the same day, even if we don't have a community to come together and feast, because a lot of us don't have that. I'm alone. I don't have anybody around me to be able to do these things with. So we're going to be focusing on the spiritual nature of what these feasts are meant to do, because it's not just a time of gathering and having fun and eating food. These are practices to line up with the promise of the coming king. It is a mirror of the birth of the Messiah and the betrothal and then the wedding feast. And so we're going to really, in this group, we're going to start to get into the meat of what those things are and how we can, regardless of where we are in the world, time zones, calendars, how we can apply the spiritual principles of these things. And the spiritual nature is outside space and time. Okay, time doesn't exist in the spirit the way that it does in this physical presence. So simply by coming into agreement with the heart posture and the spiritual nature of these things, we're going to begin to see the fruit of that in this family. Tina, I see that you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, when you were talking about the prayer side of things, and I agree, you know, different time frames, but is it kind of referring to like the prayer watches? Is that, because I know a little bit about the watches of the night and things like that. Is it that kind of?
Some. So basically, the ancient order and some of the even outside of the order, the priests understood that there were certain hours of the day where the sun and the moon were in specific points of the sky, the stars aligned to certain things. This is what like high Sabbaths were, or the feast days are tied to an alignment in the heavenly realms. And at certain points of the day, certain directions in which you're facing, it's not woohoo woohoo, but there's a different amount of spiritual energy that's present in the physical reality depending on the time of day. Or the alignment of the heavenly bodies has an influence on how thick the veil is between the spiritual realm and the earthly realm. So you'll see that eclipses were another really big thing that the ancient cultures understood. It's the absolute thinning of the veil. And now you'll see that the master mayhans of the time, the secret societies, the elites that run this world, they plan many rituals and things going on during lunar eclipses and solar eclipses and different times of day. They understand still that the circuit of the sun, the moon, and the stars affect when energy is at its peak within our realm. And so the ancient order would meet at sunrise to worship together, and they greeted the sun in this period of worship. And it was at the time when the light of the sun, and there's so much energy during that time, the hour of incense was specifically around 9 a.m. or around 3 p.m. And this was specifically set because around that time was a certain condition within the spiritual realm to maximize the efficiency of these things. And so I'm not perfect in this understanding, but yes, all through history, we see different parts of worship and prayer, of understanding that you can apply prayer, hours of prayer, that if you pray at 9 a.m. or 3 p.m. or these specific times, there's less of a veil present and your prayers are more quickly carried into the heavenly realms. There's less spiritual warfare that's able to impede your prayers. And so it's not saying not to prayer all day, every day, because, you know, that's something that we all do, but we are going to get to understand that we are invited to align our spirits to these different times to kind of aid or to bolster the power and authority that's been given to us, if that makes sense. Any other questions before I go back to the screen sharing? I don't think so. So I'm going to do a little bit in chapter 4 as well, because it's going to show some of how leadership, basically right now in the entire organization, we have myself, we have Haley, and we have Bobby as leaders in the organization. This next little bit is going to talk about, we're not living in a community physically, but we're still going to apply similar logic to, if at any point anybody is wanting to level up within the organization and take on roles of leadership and stuff like that. So this chapter 4 and a little bit into chapter 5, this is where we're going to start to get into the interview process, or the filtering out process, to decide when it's time for people to level up, basically. So I'm going to get back. I see a chat. Sorry, everyone. Thank you. I feel much more assured now. Oh, good. All right. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. All right. So chapter 4. Let's see. I'm skipping. We'll just start. When such a man comes forward to present himself as a candidate for admission into the order, he should be examined carefully by the elders of the community, and having been proven worthy, he must enter into a covenant in the presence of Elohim, the Kodesh messengers, which is the angels, and his brethren of the order, by entering into the waters of immersion, that he will do according to all that Elohim has commanded, and not turn away from the service of Yahuwah through fear of wicked men or evil spirits, nor through discouragement because of the trials which Belial shall send against him. For Yahuwah Elohim of our fathers has appointed that all who seek to live after his Kodesh order shall be tried and purified until their gold is pure and their dross consumed. That's that contamination. When a man has entered into this covenant in the waters of immersion, the elders of the community are to lay their hands upon his head and barak him with the Ruach HaKodesh of Elohim. So we're gonna talk about that, but I'm gonna skip to 5 for a second. At the end of each year, every member of the community is to be interviewed from first to last, that the spiritual standing of each in the community may be determined. All right, so I'm going to end my screen sharing now, and we're going to talk about that. So one of the parts of basically coming into this ancient order, there is going to be an extra set of rules and guidelines that anybody who remains in that group is going to have to swear to covenant to, that they're agreeing to this covenant. Something that is also going to be important, but because we are in this time, we're not able to gather and immediately immerse people. It's going to be important that people seek, if they're going to be in this group, if they've not been immersed in the true names, that it's going to be really important that they do this. And so we talked a little bit, if you're a part of the Yochanan study, I talked a little bit, I shared a breakdown about immersion and what immersion really is and the depth of what it is. It is a death of the old self. When you go under the water, you are cut off from the breath of life, the breath of the Father. You are essentially dead to your old life. Then once that death, then you are in the waters of life. So you are in the womb again. We are all born into the flesh initially through the womb, through the waters of our mother. Going into the immersion, you are put to death of the old life, and you are then in the womb of living waters. And this is where the Father is rewriting your nature. Then when you come up out of the waters, you are literally a new being. Your DNA, your spiritual nature, everything is new, brand new. Nothing of your old self is left behind. We're not in community right now. There's going to be like situations where it's not possible to do it. And it's not something to rush to go do in a bathtub because you're afraid. This is something that's really, really important, that it has to be the living waters connected to the energy of the earth. Something that as the water gets warmer, as the as things get warmer, and as we enter into spring, into summer, I'm hoping that the Father opens up my ability to be able to travel around. And Bobby has agreed to help at times to be able to do immersions for people who want to be immersed into the true names, and to come into agreement with that. But it's not going to be a requirement right now to be a part of this group to be immersed, but it has to be something that you agree to pursue. That when that opportunity is presented to you, you are agreeing that as soon as the opportunity is presented to be immersed in the true names, you are putting to death your old self and becoming a new creation. And this is going to be required to be a part of this group. It's not going to be required to be in the general fellowship. This is going to be one of those stipulations that it's going to be part of the agreements, part of the guidelines, that it must be done. And I will try to make myself available with Bobby, and whenever the Father leads, to be, I'm doing this full time. This is something in my heart to travel around and meet with people. And we'll make it work. We'll make it work. We will figure out how to get you immersed if you haven't been immersed in the true names. It's so important. It's so beautiful. It's so powerful. All through scripture, we see how important it is to where the fullness of the Ruach HaKodesh must be present in the new body, and the fullness of her spirit cannot dwell in the old body. It's like new wine and old wine skins. It is a new garment being attached to an old garment. The fullness of the Ruach HaKodesh, the blessing of that, part of that is going to be immersion. So that is something that it's going to have to be an agreement that as soon as you're able to be immersed in the true names, that it's something that we're going to try to do, and I'm going to make myself available. The other part of this is this interview process. Right now, the leadership is Bobby, Haley, and myself. We are all submitted to the Father. We are submitted to the Ruach HaKodesh. We have made each other completely accountable to correct each other, to call each other out when we might be out of line or seeing things unclearly. We edify each other, but it is this complete vulnerability that not everybody is going to be able to achieve. But there is going to be an interview process or some sort of testing and trial by the current leadership that anybody who's wanting to be brought into a level up within the community is going to have to go through a sort of interview process and a testing process and a trial process. And this is not to make anybody feel less than. This is to make sure that the heart posture of anybody that's in leadership is aligned to the Father, and that anybody who is going to be in any sort of position to speak into other people's lives in a leadership way is also going to make sure that they are fully accountable to the same level that the leadership is. So exactly how that works, I'm not sure, but there will be a sort of trial interview process, something like that. And I see your hand, Jessica. One last thing. This is beginning to speak. We'll show a little bit more as we continue, but this is beginning to talk about how the moment you step into pursuing the Father in this way, the moment you step into the order of the ancients, the Father himself promises that your trials are going to get harder. Because part of the refinement process of putting your flesh to death is burning away the dross, this gunk, this extra stuff attached to the fleshly self. And so it is part of the order of the ancients is teaching how to come into agreement with the difficulties and trials. They're not always weapons of the enemy. Like a lot of people want to assign of like when bad stuff happens to you and difficulties happen, that it's just the enemy and spiritual warfare. And that's not the case. The Father himself says you are going to be tried and tested until there's no darkness left. There's no fleshly part of you. If you come into this fellowship, you must be able to understand that you will be put to the trial to a degree that the rest of the fellowship is not going to be. So yes, Jess.
I just wanted to say that last year prior to my baptism, I was reading the Didache, and I had not known this prior, and I feel that Father led me to it about fasting for at least 24 hours prior to being baptized, and whoever baptizes you as well. So like 3 days before I'm supposed to go get baptized, I come across this, and I literally had just gotten the book. Praise God, hallelujah. So I was able to do that, and I just thought that was beautiful that who baptized me also baptized, and his wife who came along, or I'm really nervous. His wife that came along also fasted. Thank you.
Mm.
That's
Yeah,
all.
that's
I
beautiful.
didn't know
Yeah.
if anybody knew about that.
Yeah. So something that was regularly taught, and we'll get into it, it talks about not neglecting the fasts of Yahuwah. So something that's really not understood is the importance of fasting. It is an affliction of the flesh and the spirit to allow for a greater pouring out of the spiritual nature. And so it was very, very regular to fast in preparation for the immersions. So thank you for pointing that out. And we will, part of this community will be to come into agreement together and to do regular fasts together. It's not going to be the same for everybody because people's bodies are different. We're at different stages. I have been training my body for over a year now to be able to fast for longer. I used to not be able to go more than 24 hours, and then I would start getting sick. So it's going to look differently for each person, but a part of this extra order will be a practice of regular fasting and to come into agreement for fasting. And prior to immersions, we would also be doing the fasting thing. Tina, yes.
Just to say about the fasting, and I'm trying to remember what scriptures it was, but I think it's in the Tanakh or in the books of Kings. I'm not sure, but there is something to say that there are certain months where fasting needs to be adhered to as well as a community. I don't know if you've seen that. But I've only just literally started reading about that in the last month or two. So I was really surprised. I think month 10 is mentioned, month 7 is mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not written them all down yet, but I'm trying to sort of work through them. So I kind of saying about
Yeah. So in preparation for atonement, the feast, like the Day of Atonement, they would fast. And so we've got trumpets and atonement. There was a fasting period leading up to that was like a preparation of the spirit to prepare for what was coming. And so we'll get into it. We'll study it out together. I'm not an expert, but there is information throughout canon as well as in the apocryphal text that talk about congregation-wide fasts that were done that were coming into agreement as a people, and that would also heighten the potency of the fast because now we are fasting together, coming into agreement as one mind and one accord. But we'll figure it out together. It's going to have to be different. We're all in different places. We can't do it exactly the same. But yes, it is going to be something that we get into. Let's see. I'm trying to figure out where to go next because I literally just have the whole thing highlighted here. I'm going to read a couple verses in chapter 6. So I'm going to go back to screen sharing. Come on. Screen sharing. All right, this is 5, 6. So I'm only going to read 12 through 14 in this, and I'll skip to chapter 7. So, for only through obedience to the Torah and ordinances of Elohim, walking faithfully after his Kodesh order and enduring to the end, therein can a man be redeemed from the fall and gain a remission of all his sins, so that his mind can be opened to gaze upon the true light of life. It is through obedience to Torah and ordinance of Yahuwah that a man receives the Ruach HaKodesh, which will lead him to true and complete union with Elohim and all Kodesh men, as his iniquities are lifted from him and his mind is expanded to receive Elohim's truth, that he may walk therein as one of the children of light. For the atonement of the Lamb of Elohim comes upon all those who are upright and humble and submissive to all the ordinance of Elohim, that their sins should be washed away in the waters of immersion, and they may be sanctified through the blood of the covenant and immersion in fire and in the Ruach HaKodesh. So I'm going to skip to chapter 7, but I'm not going to stop the screen recording, but this is also going back to what I shared. There's an immersion in water, and then there's immersion in fire. The immersion in the water is the waters of separation. It is purification. It is a new life birthed from death. It's going to be required. But the next thing, it's already talking about the immersion in fire, the trials in which we face. It is partially to expand the mind, expand the spirit. So when you first enter into this order, there are going to be things that you cannot perceive until Yahuwah himself expands your mind and opens your mind to be able to perceive the fullness of the light. The fullness of the Ruach HaKodesh is reserved for obedience to the Torah, to the ordinance of Yahuwah, and for immersion. It's not saying that you can't have the Spirit. It's saying that the absolute fullness of life, the fullness of life must have immersion and must have the Torah present. So that's going to be something that is present in this group. So I'm going to read all of chapter 7 because it's really short, and then I'll pause, and if there's anybody with their hands raised, we can talk. But for now, let's get into chapter 7. Those who enter into covenant to hold all things in common, according to the order of Hanuk, and faithfully adhere to the order of the ancients, should be instructed that their minds may be opened to the vision of eternity, and how the order of the Shemayim can be established and perpetuated here on earth. He who is called to instruct the children of light in these matters must understand and teach the Talmudim, the students, the true nature of man, the different influences which form his character, the meaning of his history, and the reason that Elohim at one time barak him bounteously, so bless him bounteously, and at another time afflicted him dreadfully. This is the hidden knowledge, the application of which redeemed man from his natural state and ushered him into the Kodesh order of Elohim, where he can be prepared to enter into the presence of Elohim himself and partake of the fruits of eternal lives. So I'm going to stop my screen sharing there because we're getting ready to skip a good bit. All right, so we get a little bit of insight. What exactly is this hidden knowledge? It's not just how to pray. It's not just about fasting and Torah. We're going to discuss Torah. There's going to be a lot of it. But in chapter 7, it begins to talk about they understood the nature of mankind, the making of the man's body, the spirit, how that works. It's also talking about what makes up a man's character. So this is trauma healing. This is working through finding truth in the inward being, how the soul comes into the body, and we're going to start to explore the depths of what makes up your mind, what makes up your spirit, what connects you to your physical form. So this is all a part of being able to perceive the fullness of the kingdom, and these things like trauma healing is going to be a part of it. Working through these things is going to be a part of it. Understanding energy flow in the human body is going to be a part of it. Certain diets, what feeds the body, what weighs the body down. Lots of these explorations is exploring the nature of physical man and the spiritual man. And we're going to really get into the depth of certain things in this group. That's not going to be a requirement for the rest of the group. But even back then, understanding the physical flesh and the spiritual nature, and what creates a man's character is something that they taught back then, and we're going to get into now. And it's to prepare for partaking of the fruits of the tree of life, which we'll get into some very amazing studies about the fruits, the tree of life and the fruits and the energy points within the body, the 7 seals or the 7 chakras, the wheels within wheels. Like this is all stuff that a lot of people would be afraid of, because this hidden information has been taken by the secret combination, by the wicked people, and twisted. But this is all something that was taught: breath work, meditation, awakening, vibration, energy, frequency, praying. All of this stuff is something that we're going to explore in this group. So I'm going to stop there. Does anybody have any questions? I see Tracy with your hand up.
So when you say meditation, it's not like the new age empty your mind, but meditating on Yahuwah's word and his truth, his promises, correct?
So there are different forms of meditation. It is, the word meditation literally just means to dwell on something. So it's similar to like chewing the cud. You are extracting as much as possible out of a specific thing. So there are practices of emptying your mind, but with meditation, it's all through scripture, and it might be meditating on a specific word. So for example, we'll do guided Hebrew meditations. One example would be shalom. To meditate on shalom, we would do a Hebrew breakdown of what word is in Hebrew, begin a meditation on that is silencing the surroundings to come into a place of being in the spirit and meditating on that word through different breathing patterns, where we breathe in and we speak and we absorb shalom. So it can be speaking it out loud, where shalom is repeated. And so what we're doing is we are having our mind, body, and spirit coming into alignment into what shalom is. And so it's talking about spiritual concept in the Hebraic is letting it soak into your bones. So in the Hebrew understanding, the bones is like the core of your essence. And in the biological understanding, the bones is where your blood is made. It is where your life comes out of, it springs out of your bones. And so when we meditate in a Hebraic understanding, it is to allow certain understandings, certain knowledge to soak into our bones at the corest level of who we are. We might meditate on Psalms. We could meditate like on Shalom, or meditate on Ahava, or simply meditating on the name of Yahuwah. That was often done. That's praying in the manner of the ancients, is repeating those words of power over ourselves, because sometimes we can say things and it's more of a mental thing, but the repetition begins to train your nervous system to bring it into a deeper place. Rather than just being a mental understanding, it begins to wash over, and it can affect the energy of our DNA to really soak into the core of our being. And so, yes, we are going to explore different forms of meditation, but it's not, that's something, yep, there are ways to meditate wickedly, just like there are ways to do breath work that is wicked. There's ways to move your body, and like yoga that is directly linked to deities outside of the Father. But all of that understanding came from the Father himself. Meditation, breath work, moving your body in specific positions to align and to make your body come into agreement with spiritual matters. So in this group, we're really going to try to separate where the enemy has taken and twisted things. Like the enemy can't create anything of his own. All he can do is twist something that the Father already made. And so meditation and breath work and praying in the spirit and all of these things, we are going to reclaim. We are taking it back. It does not belong to the enemy. And so we're giving so somatic exercises and how to release energy in the body, traumas in the body, ways in which energy can be trapped. There is wickedness in energy healing. There's healing of energies outside of the Father, but then there's also ways that we are given to where we can regulate our systems, where we can start to increase the proper flow of the energy in the body that is completely in line with Scripture, in line with the Father, and aligning our spirit to His ways. And part of this, like, it's going to be triggering for some people who have only ever experienced breath work and meditation and that sort of thing in the new age. But that's so part of this wickedness of there's so much truth, and the awakening and all of that is available in so much of the new age for a reason. Like, why would people who experience awakening in the new age and meditation and the energy healing side of things, why would they ever submit themselves to Christianity and the little bits of truth that are available in religious circles when it's like stepping back, it's like stepping down? So what we're doing here is we are anchoring these practices in truth and submission to the Father, but we're going to begin to explore the pathways of the ancients that allows our flesh to be put to death and to begin to grow as spiritual beings.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else before we move on? Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again. We're getting into chapter 11. This is going on for a while. If at any point this is too long, I understand this is lasting a while. I think we've got chapter 11 we're going to do. We're getting to the end. We're more than halfway through this, so I appreciate your patience with this. It is pretty meaty. All right. I'm skipping forward to chapter 11, and I'm going to read all of chapter 11. These are the fruits of Elohim, of the Ruach, enlightenment, whereby a man can perceive the ways of Elohim to walk therein, discernment to know the good from evil, reverence for the name of Yahuwah, and consciousness of the approaching judgments of Elohim, humility, patience, abundant charity, love of righteousness, vision, wisdom, trust, faith, confidence in the power of the Almighty Elohim, knowledge, self-mastery, sanctity, pure thoughts, abounding in love for all who follow truth, purity, modesty, and the ability to hide within oneself the secrets of Elohim, which one has received. All these things come unto men in this world through communion with the Ruach of truth. All those who walk in the path which is set before them by the Ruach of truth shall receive health in their navel, and marrow to their bones, and shall find wisdom and hidden treasures of knowledge. These shall inherit eternal lives, even to the continuation of the seeds forever and ever, worlds without end. Eternal shall be their barakoth, and everlasting their joy in the realms of splendor. For they shall be crowned with light and robed in splendor, and shall dwell in everlasting burnings in the presence of our Elohim. So this is talking about there are extra fruits. We all know the fruits of the Spirit. There are 9 given in Galatians, fruits of the Spirit, but these are additional fruits of this group that will be taught in consciousness, wisdom, enlightenment, self-mastery. These are parts of this that is above and beyond the fruits of the Spirit, but these are extra fruits given. I'm going to skip now to just one verse in 14. I'm going to read verse 14. Here we go. So I'm just reading 7. They are to unite their efforts in overcoming their carnal natures, that the flesh may be subjected to the Spirit, putting off the carnal man and becoming spiritual in their natures. So this is what we're seeking here. I'm going to skip forward to 16. All right, so in 16, I think I'm gonna read all of well, oh my goodness. All right. Now I'm just gonna read through, okay? The rest of it is important. So I'm gonna read from 16 all the way through the end of 21. This is the last bit of this whole thing. Once I finish reading, we'll go back and discuss, but we're done after this. All right. When a man desires to enter the covenant and take upon himself the ordinances of Elohim's house, thereby allying himself with the congregation of the Kodashim, the set apart ones, he is to be interviewed to determine his conduct in life, his relations with his fellow men, and his adherence to correct principles and the true doctrines of the Shamayim. He who is found acceptable shall then enter the order of Hanuk after the Aaronic order, or through obedience to the word of Elohim and the instructions of those who preside over him in the kahuna, he may progress from one degree to another until he enters the order of the Father, the most Kodesh of all. Moreover, every member of the order is to be interviewed at the end of each year to evaluate his spiritual attitude and the performance of his duties. This biannual and other interviews the standing of each man in the community may be evident, that the righteous may be promoted by virtue of their increased understanding and the integrity of their conduct, while the forward shall be demoted for their waywardness. So this is talking about the leadership continually. It's talked about once a year, and I don't know how we're going to structure it in this group, but leadership, or the furthering of going from the general fellowship into the order, is going to be based on the spiritual understanding of each person. And it will be the leadership that's currently established, speaking to each person, interviewing them, testing their spirits, seeing where they might have weaknesses or blindnesses, or where they do really, really well. And so it's like assignments of different roles in the community are going to be kind of structured this way. And nobody is perfect, but we're going to try our best as the leadership to make sure that this isn't anything outside of the Ruach, and measuring the fruits of each person and the understanding of the spiritual nature and the ability to let go of the fleshly mind. I'm going to get into 17 now. When any member of the community has been offended by another or observes another in wrongdoing, he is not to come against the one erring, one with a railing accusation, but is to approach him truthfully, humbly, and humanely. A Kodesh person of Elohim must not bear hatred in his heart towards his brother. If the offender will not hear his complaint, then he is to take with him 2 of the teachers to reason with him. If the offender will not hear them, then he is to be called before the Kohen Hagadol and his brethren who are set as judges in Yisrael. This will all disputations be settled in order, without anger or emotion, that peace and harmony and unity may be preserved in Yisrael. Furthermore, no man is to bring a charge publicly against his brother, except that he prove it by witnesses. For in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses shall every charge be established. This is something we already have in the general guidelines for the group. It's something that's very, very important. We've had somebody be removed for public accusation, and it's something that's very, very important. And it is present in the general group, but it's also going to be present as a guideline in the Path of the Ancients group, that we do not make public accusations. Issues must be brought privately. There's an order, and if agreement can't be made between 2 people, then the leadership gets involved. So this is already present, but I think it's kind of, I guess, common sense that this is going to continue into this order of the ancients. Chapter 18.
Or yeah, we do have a question from Tracy.
Oh, yeah, what's up?
So, yes, and I think we've already had a really good example like that. Like, it's still okay. Like, nope, you don't have to agree on everything. But like, for instance, the calendar thing, Oria and Haley, being able to discuss that. But you're right. I think it's so important for eventually us to get to the calendar. I mean, otherwise, how can we keep a day? Right? But I appreciated the opportunity to, be able to bring scripture to light and um the just study things out because I don't know I don't know what I don't know. And so I would like to know, you know what I mean? Like to at least study out scripture. So I think I'm sure there will be so many opportunities to do that, but to do it appropriately. Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yeah, and actually the next couple chapters reference specific discussions and how that is to be brought forth.
Mhm.
Which is, yes, it's really, really important because this is going to be a place like, especially like we're now in a place where back then they had the books of Enoch to reference. Okay. They had so much solidified information that we now in this age, we're going to be discovering together. And a lot of it will be dependent on divine revelation of the Father, but having a proper order to where these discussions can happen in
Yeah.
peace and in love and a proper safe space is really
And
important.
also, while you're saying that, um, obviously, I think it is very important to read all of I'm reading all of the Apocrypha. This is my second year to do that. Um, so that we have the opportunity to test all things.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a tiny hiccup though, I'm trying to recognize and tell me if I'm out of line in this, but what is appropriate for hey, is this a red flag? How do we feel about that? Or is this a something that are there hidden evil books that we should recognize as not of the Ruach? And how to discuss that, you know what I mean, instead of accepting everything because it's placed before us.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of gave an example of you brought concerns of the writings of Abraham to the group, and we discussed it. And at the end of the day, like everyone is free to question and to bring their concerns. But at the end of the day, the truth of the matter is we all have different perspectives. So two people can read the same text and come to
Right.
completely different convictions based on where the Ruach has each person. And when that happens, that is a situation where we must be at peace to understand if two people are earnest in the understanding or earnest in
Mhm.
their approach and they can read the same text and come to different conclusions, it means that's okay. The Father is like, will make all things clear at some point, but we are not at the point where everything is made clear. And there's going to be room for being able to interpret things slightly differently. Some people might choose to see, like I imagine the book of Jasher. If we get into Jasher, there will be people that are like, nah, I don't like this. And then there will be people that
Yeah,
it resonates as truth.
I
And
think
yeah, go ahead.
I'm excited about that because we're all learning. At the same time,
Here, I'm gonna stop.
maybe when we ask questions, when and where is it appropriate to ask questions so that it's not like you're going to offend someone, because I'm always on pins and needles like, oh my goodness, I hope I don't offend somebody, only because they're like, oh, I'm so offended. So, and I'm just not offended. I'm like, hey, let's see what this says. How
Yeah,
about, who cares what we think? Let's see what he thinks, right?
yeah, yeah. I
But
mean, there's gonna be go ahead, sorry.
I like that you said that it's okay that we don't all get to the same page at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm being fed like a water hose on blast, you know, like you're trying to take a sip and you're just like, oh.
That's right. Yeah,
so so it's hard
yeah,
to put thank you.
yeah,
Tina's got
yeah,
her hand raised.
yeah, yeah. So just real quick, every question is welcome in the group, even questions about canon, about like, because in all reality, the New Testament is not the same as the Torah. The Torah is directly from the Father. Whereas the New Testament, a lot of it is just letters from one person to another, or from one person to a congregation. They are worthy to be studied. They are worthy to be looked at through inspired scripture. Everything, whether it's New Testament or apocryphal, is going to be held up against Torah. If something
Yeah.
contradicts Torah, then we have a problem. But at the very other side of that, there's going to be so much in what we're studying that simply is not discussed in Torah. So at the end of the day, it's not going to be something where we can solidify and say, yep, this is of the Father or this isn't. And it's going to be up to the Ruach within each one of us to convict or to confirm or deny certain things, and you can grow. And so at one point,
Yeah.
the Ruach might tell you, stay away from that. That's no good, because the Ruach knows that that might
Yeah.
confuse you. That might be not something that your brain can handle right now. The
Mhm.
Ruach is patient and gracious and allows us to go from milk to solid food. And if something's confusing or if something doesn't line up, we are going to allow people to come to that conclusion on their own, while at the same time being able to explore certain texts that other people might want to. And that is because the Ruach knows what is good for each man and what is not good for each man. And it's not going to be the same for everybody. But the Torah is the absolute authority of all things. That is the law. That is the perfect law. That is Lady Wisdom being written into text form. There is no contradictions. If something contradicts Torah, we are throwing it out as a people, as a group. We don't go there.
Yes.
But there's going to
Agreed.
be so much that we study that just simply doesn't have that mirror, and that's when we're going to allow people to come to different conclusions.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Tina, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I was just there's a couple of bits I wanted to sort of add to that, and this is just through my own thing of there was a very large period for a year where I was without fellowship, and I was just reading scripture over scripture, and the only person I really had to speak to was Yah. And thank you, Abba, for always answering my questions. But you know, like what you were saying, Tracy, about what, you know, offending somebody by asking a question, and I used to feel like that a lot. But what I have found and realized is sometimes when we ask that question, somebody else wanted to ask it, or
Yeah.
in terms of the testing side of things that Doria was talking about, and I've experienced this too, is sometimes we can be a little bit dogmatic on what our view is.
Mhm.
That in order to grow, we have to hear that other person's question for us to go, oh, actually,
Yeah.
that is what you're trying to show me. So I personally don't think there's any stupid question, as people will say in the world, you know, like there's no reason not to ask it. And if you feel, today on one of the chats, I mentioned, I can't remember if it was Jessica or Jess, there's two of you, so I can't remember who it was, but in one of their area codes was a number 313 and what that number meant in Strongs. And I've been pushed to mention that to her for about a week since we joined the group. And I was like, because I didn't know her, I didn't do it. And then I posted it in the group, and she was like, thank you, because that meant so much to me. So sometimes the Ruach does push us to ask those questions or to state those things. Yet 313, I knew it was you. I was just checking that it was you, Jessica. Thank you. But it was like, I could have put that in the group a week ago, and I just kind of put it off because I wasn't sure. So I would say just do it. You know, if you're worried,
Yeah.
I'll say.
Thank you.
All right. Is there anything else before we get into the remainder of the text? We are like we're out on 2.5 hours going strong in this chat. So I want to try to wrap it up sooner, get people going on to their lives. I still have to work through, like, Addie's been downstairs watching YouTube this whole time, and I still have to do her homeschool and stuff like that. So she's having a heyday on YouTube. But I want to just, if we can, pause any questions while I get through 18, 19, 20, and 21. I'm going to read through it all, then we'll go back and discuss all of it. And that's when we'll open it up for further discussion. So just bear with me. I always do this wrong at first. Screen specific. There we go. All right, I'm just going to read through. Hold your questions till the end. The These rules should govern the affairs of the community. All those who have entered into the Kodesh order of Elohim should be obedient to those who have been placed over them in the kahuna in all matters, especially those relating to the order of Hanuk. All the elect are to eat at a common table, assemble at every appointed time to worship Yahuwah their Elohim, and attend all councils to which they were invited. They are to attend the schools of the kahuna, where they can be instructed in the order of the Shemayim. They are neither to eat nor drink that which has not been barak and sanctified. They shall assemble at sunrise, high noon, and sundown to praise Yahuwah their Elohim and worship before his throne. They shall meet together often to study the word of Elohim and to share the word of Hai, the word of life. The council of the order is to be conducted according to the Torah of Elohim. Every member is to have an equal opportunity to give his opinion in the council. No one, however, is to interrupt while his brother is speaking, not to speak until he is finished. Everyone is to speak in turn as he is called upon. No one is to speak on any subject which is not the concern of the council. This, by reasoning together, will the council determine the will of Elohim, that all things in the order may be done to honor the Elohim of Yisrael. Regarding the teaching of this order, O Elisha, no one is to engage in discussion or disputation with another concerning the Torah of Elohim, nor is it to be discussed with those who are not sincerely seeking the truth. I'm going to pause there because it's literally saying the Torah is not up for debate. The Torah itself is not up for discussion. And some of these deeper discussions, especially concerning the Torah, it's not beneficial to those who are not sincerely seeking the truth. But anyway, with those, however, that have been chosen, who have chosen the right path, everyone is to discuss matters pertaining to the knowledge of Elohim's truth and of his righteous judgments. The purpose of such discussions is to guide the minds of the members of the community, to give them insight into Elohim's hidden wonders and truths, and to bring them to walk blamelessly, each with his neighbor in harmony with all that has been revealed to them. For this life is a time of preparation for meeting Yahuwah, and a time when the elect must be careful not to mingle with the wicked, lest they be led to turn aside from the way through the cunning craftiness of the evil ones. Thus must the elect be careful to live by every word of Elohim. Say unto those who are seeking the inner vision in these dark days, said Yahuwah Elohim of Yisrael, let my elect keep no fellowship with the world, for their ways are evil before me. Leave them to pursue their wealth and profit, for they are slaves to their desires. Be zealous to carry out every covenant and commandment which you have received in the ordinances of my house, or you shall be in the power of the devil, and surely it shall be hard for you at the judgment bar. Faithfully exercise your stewardships according to the Kodesh order of Elohim, which I have revealed unto you. Accept willingly whatever may befall you, for I, Yahuwah, have all things in my hands, and take your pleasure in nothing but according to the will of Elohim. Speak only that which is acceptable before Elohim, and lust not after anything which I have not commanded. Then shall your reward be sure, and you shall stand at the judgment bar without fear. Amen. All right. That concludes the scriptural portion. And so what I want to talk about, there's a couple things in that bit that we cannot possibly do. So assembling together at sunrise, noon, and sunset to praise. We are all at different time zones. It is, however, going to be an understanding and something that we do try to do as we grow and as we learn, to try to be aware of those specific times. Sunrise, high noon, and sunset are very powerful times for worship, to be sending gratitude. But it's not going to be all at the same time because we're at different time zones. As well, we're going to be really, really intentional in this group about praying over all of our food, blessing it and commanding life into the food, especially with the diets that we have. It's not going to be something you're going to get kicked out of the group for if you don't remember to bless your food, but it's something that we're going to talk about a lot more in this group. Then we talk about we are going to, in this Path of the Ancients, have specific calls scheduled. And because we're not all living in community, it might not be that you can attend the live calls, but it is going to be something when we have specific discussion topics or whatever, that it will be required to, if you can't attend the live, to at least see the video later on, so we can all be in one mind and one accord with these things that we discuss. It addresses the order of, having hands raised and letting brothers and sisters speak, and that type of order and structure that we're already starting to mirror, but that's going to be present when we discuss things. It talks about, we're not debating Torah in this group. The Torah is off limits. We can talk about the Torah, but it's not something to debate. And there's certain discussions here that we're going to have within this community that are not going to be had with the general populace, because some of these things would be confusion, would be even a distraction, or even a possible foothold for the enemy, for people who don't have the correct heart posture, who haven't fully committed themselves to this path of righteousness and love and the set apart nature. So part of this is going to be agreeing to some of the stuff that we talk about within this community is going to be kept within this community. And it's not saying that we're better than anybody else, but it's to protect people who are not ready for this level of pursuit from being distracted, or for being pulled away into self-righteousness or seeking of information outside of the will of the Father. What else here? Yeah, I think that's pretty much it, basically, that the Father is those who are seeking the inner vision, those who are seeking this access to the heavenlies. We're going to be tried. We're going to be having tough conversations. We're going to have scheduled calls to discuss certain things and to explore certain things and to do fasts as a group and all of that. But yeah, that pretty much is all of it. I'm shutting my book, and we are going to open it up for, any more discussion or call, questions or whatever. And then we're going to end this call. So it's not, I don't want to have a 3-hour, a 3-hour call. We're pushing it, but, yeah.
I
Tracy.
love accountability. But I can't say that I'm super schooled in Torah because I'm so fresh to it. So, like for instance, when I keep the feasts, sometimes it's in my heart because my family doesn't do that, and I know. And also I'm not allowed to go against, my husband and what he wants. And he's like, well, I'm doing, you know, the fake Passover. So anyway, I just felt like I needed to say that because of course my heart wants to do that, but I'm not very good at it right now.
Yeah, and that's where, like, Yahuwah is made strong in our weakness. Right now, we're dwelling in a season of weakness, and that we're not gathered together. We aren't all in the proper timeline. We don't know all the things that the ancients understood. We don't have access to the wisdom, all the texts that Enoch wrote. So we have weakness, and the Father knows the nature of his people, that we are jars of clay, that we are beings of weakness. He's not standing over us expecting us to get it all right. It's about the heart posture, and we're going to do the best we can to explore and learn together these things, and we're going to do the best we can to walk in obedience with these things. But the Father is not going to hold perfection over us and exaction over us when we physically cannot in this time. But I do believe, as we come into agreement spiritually, as one mind and one accord in the spiritual sense, that we are going to see so much blessing and favor. Jess.
I just wanted to say that I have been confused for about a year about the order because I thought it was only men
Mm. Men statistically were the ones that carried the priesthood in the Old Testament, and women were considered the tent stake. There's a lot of misconceptions about the roles between men and women, and this is something that we probably will explore in the group. But men are not superior to women. They have different roles. So the men have the physical provision, protection. They carry the weight in this physical reality. The priesthood comes with spiritual attacks and weapons of the enemy, in which the men in the Old Testament carried that more than the women. It's not impossible. Women were prophetesses, women were even judges, women were a lot more elevated in scripture than what is shown. But in the Old Testament, there was a division. They even didn't take wives. So men, they agreed to celibacy in this order, and that's something that we'll talk about. But there's certain aspects of this that, because the veil was torn, because the Levitical priesthood has been ripped away, the rights of the earthly priesthood have been torn away. There is no division the same way that it was back then. And so men and women, there is no Hebrew, there is no Greek, there is no difference between men and women. And so now, because of Messiah, we are now coming into a more fullness of spiritual being, not just the physical restrictions. So we're gonna get into that, but there's a lot of misconceptions. The priesthood and the official burden of what was needed in the physical reality was completely restricted to the men, but the women had a huge role of themselves. The women taught the children. The women's were the ones keeping the home, ordering the home. There's so much to go into that. And so right now we still see a balance of the masculine and the feminine, and we're going to find the proper balance kind of together. We're going to discuss it, but it's definitely not something that is reserved to just men anymore. That veil has been torn, the temple has been torn. Each one of us, man or woman, is made in the image of the Most High. And within each person is the temple. Within each person is the Holy of Holies. So there is no superiority now between men and women. A temple is a temple. It's the same thing. So we'll explore more of that for sure. Kim.
Now you were talking about the things that are important, and fasting, praying, something, and I'm asking this, please forgive me, I'm asking this out of pure ignorance. What about circumcision? How important is that? And I'm now talking obviously from the male side.
So this is something to where you have to look at the Old Testament was the physical law, and the New Covenant is the spiritual law. So Paul is often, well, we'll get into Paul and how a lot of people misinterpret him and thinking that the law is done away with. If you decide to find your righteousness in the elements of the physical law, you are going backwards, and you lose your salvation in a sense of none of it has anything to do with following the letter of the law exactly. So we see things like what was commanded in the Old Testament is seats, fringes. Men were commanded in the Old Testament to wear these seats. The cloth, the fabric itself, has nothing to do with anything apart from being a physical reminder, an anchor in the physical reality for a greater spiritual principle. The same thing with women covering their hair. So women covering their hair, the fabric itself is not what matters. It is a reflection of a spiritual principle of having, if you were married, a woman was married to a man, that was her covering. It was an element of spiritual protection. An unmarried woman, she's covered by the Most High. So it's a physical representation of a spiritual covenant. And so in circumcision, in the Old Testament, it was required the same way that the tzitzits were required. It was an and in the writings of Abraham actually goes into, there was actually a circumcision of the Gentiles where, and this is TMI maybe for some people, where the foreskin was completely removed. But in the writings of Abraham, it talks about how it's not fully removed, but opened up in a way. And it represents the opening up of the man to the spiritual nature. And so it was a way in which they made their physical vessels come into agreement into what Abarit means. So Abarit is Hebrew. That's what Hebrew is. To be Hebrew is a person crossed over, somebody who goes from death into life, from carnal mind to spiritual minded, from wilderness to promised land, from outside of covenant into covenant. And so part of that requirement that was much more strict in the Old Testament was you must cause your body to come into physical agreement with that nature of a man. Cutting his foreskin was the covenant sign that his body, oh, thank you for joining, Tracy, it was a long time, was having that physical submission, the physical anchor to the spiritual nature. But now we are in the spiritual law. We don't need the same exact physical representation, because now the temple, the living dwelling place of the Holy of Holies, is within us. So back then, the Most High either covered all of the Hebrew people, or he had to basically disown all of the Hebrew people. Laws were so unbelievably strict because there was a temple that covered the entire nation. And so it's different. So now you see in the New Testament where Paul still had Timothy circumcised. It was still a choice that he made to bring his physical vessel into that, to have that physical representation of the spiritual covenant. But Paul is also very, very clear that if you think that that physical act is what brings your salvation, if you think that covering your hair with a piece of fabric is what brings righteousness, if you think wearing tzitzits is what brings your righteousness and what brings the proper standing before the Father, you're going backwards. Does it mean that there's no value in tzitzits? No, it's beautiful to wear that physical representation. Does it mean that there's no value for a woman covering her hair? No, it's a beautiful symbol of a woman's submission to the Father. Does it mean that there's no value in circumcision? No, because it's still a choice that you can make to bring your flesh into that sort of alignment to the spiritual nature. But it's not required, because somebody who is born in the spirit, your flesh is literally dead in the eyes of the Father. Your flesh is no longer bound to the letter of the law because it's not living anymore. Your flesh is not subject to that the same way. You are now a new creation, and we are held to the spirit of the law, which on the other side of that is actually a lot more strict than the letter of the law. Messiah said, "Verily I tell you, you've heard it said, do not commit adultery. But I tell you, even if you look at a woman with lust in your heart, you've already committed adultery. Don't murder. But I tell you, if you look at your brother with hatred in your heart, you've already committed it." So it's not about following the letter of the law anymore, because we're not bound to the whole of the Hebrew people. We are now bound as spiritual beings dwelling within the temple, but it's a higher standard than the letter of the law. And so there's no darkness within us that is not going to be brought to light. We are required at even greater levels to love one another and to love the Father and to walk in obedience. And if you truly are born again of the Spirit, you will find that you walk an even more righteous path than they did in the Old Testament. Messiah said, "Verily I tell you, your righteousness must exceed the Pharisees and the scribes." This is not saying that you need to master the letter of the law better than they all did. They had it memorized. So what he's saying is that your righteousness, your ability to adhere to the Spirit of the Father, must exceed the mental understanding of what the law brings. So I don't know if that is clarity or not. Like, so for me,
Yeah.
I don't have a son. No, go ahead.
No, yes. But I just
Like,
also
I don't,
I just want to say thank you very much for this. We could carry
yeah.
on another 3 hours. I absolutely, I can, I'm giggly from all the information. It's just phenomenal. Thank you very much.
Yay. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I think just to kind of like wrap up the circumcision thing, we talked about it a little bit. I don't have a son. If I had a son, I would choose not to circumcise him at birth. I would choose not to do that, but I would teach him about what circumcision is and why it was there. I would teach him about tzitzits, why they are there. I would teach him about putting the word on the doorpost and why it's there, and allow my son, if he chooses in his own conviction of like, I don't have to circumcise my flesh anymore to be circumcised in the spirit, but I want to put my flesh, I want to have that connection in my physical body to the circumcision of my spirit. I would love for my son to do that. Is it required? No, but that's how I would personally kind of approach that. Man, we're getting on 3 hours, guys. We did it. I knew this was going to be meaty. This is not going to be a regular thing in the future. These types of discussions, I want to kind of limit it to about an hour and a half. Probably this will be about a regular call, but we needed to address the fullness of what the order is so that people coming in are going to be able to see this video and really be caught up to date of the heart of this group. It's not required, but it is extra, and I fully believe that it will result in further blessing, further anointing, wisdom beyond what we can ask or imagine even now. So I'm really excited. I will post, now that we've gone through this, I'm going to formulate an official structure of guidelines of what to expect in the group, and I'm going to post it, and everybody that's in the group will have to agree to it or I will boot you from the group. It's not anything personal. It's just to protect those who really aren't lined up with the heart of the group, that we don't want to derail them from their own walk. But yeah, that's something that will be posted. I don't know if it's going to be later today or later on in the next couple of days, but I will post that and ask that you all read through it and agree to it. And yeah, it was fun, guys. I'm so glad that you enjoyed it and you hung out with me for this long. It was such a pleasure, and I'm so glad we got to get through it. But I'm going to cut the call unless there's any other questions or anything. I don't see any hand raised, but we are now coming up to 3 hours, and I really don't want to get to 3 hours. We might actually even be over 3 hours because I think we started the call a little bit before the hour started. But anyway, I love you all. Thank you for being here. I am so excited for any further discussions and learning and all of the growth that we're going to get to do. I'm excited to be in this even more set apart bond that we're all going to have together, because we're going to be one spirit in a sense. We are going to be coming together into one body and love each other on a whole new level. And I'm so excited for that. So shalom, shalom. I love you all. And we will talk some other time. Shalom.